Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's planning meeting. My name is Councillor Charlie Marks, and I am Vice Chair of the Planning Committee, but will be chairing this meeting today. Welcome also to those members of the press and public who are joining us via the live stream. Before we begin, please can I take this opportunity to remind everyone to turn mobiles and computers to silent and ensure that when using the microphone, the red light is on and then turned off when you have finished speaking. We now go to agenda item number 1, and I would like to ask Member Services if we have any apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies received today from Councillors Benny, Connor, Mrs French, Councillor Hicks. Just like to draw to your attention that Councillor Sam Clark is present today as a substitute for Councillor Benny, and Councillor Murphy is present as a substitute for Councillor Mrs French. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Joe. Agenda item number 2 is to confirm and sign the minutes from the meeting of the 21st of August and 18th of September 2024. You will also see agenda item number 12, there is the need to confirm and sign the confidential minutes from the 21st of August 2024. And unless anyone has any comments to make on the confidential minutes, I suggest that we agree them at this point without need to go into confidential session. Does anybody have any comments to make regarding the confidential minutes? No. Do I have a proposer to approve the public and confidential minutes of the 21st of August 2024 and the minutes of the 18th of September 2024? Councillor Mafferdon. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Senniclough, thank you. Does any members have any comments to make on the public minutes? Please raise your hands. No? Okay. Can I have a show of hands to approve the public and confidential minutes of the 21st of August 2024 and the minutes of the 18th of September 2024? Thank you. I believe those to be passed. These minutes are agreed. We now move on to agenda item number 3, which is urgent items. There are none. Agenda item number 4 is declarations of interest. Members of services will now go to each councillor in turn, and can you please state if you have anything to declare in relation to any of the agenda items?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Mafferdon.
Thank you, Chair. I have nothing to declare apart from the fact that I am a member of Wisbech Town Council, Mayor of Wisbech, and also I have property in proximity to the agenda item number 9, but I will remain impartial and I will approach it with an open mind. And also like to declare that I received a late notification regarding agenda. This one is number 10. Number 10, and I will keep an open mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Marks.
Thank you, Joe. I'm a member of mainly Parish Council, but take no part in their planning. On item number 10, the applicant is known to me, or Councillor D is known to me, but apart from that, I remain open-minded. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Senniclough.
Thank you. Under agenda items 5 and 6, a Whittlesea Town Councillor, member of the Planning Committee, of which I'm not a member of the Planning Committee, put 2 posts on a community Facebook page encouraging residents to lobby me over these 2 applications. Due to those actions, I was lobbied and immediately sought advice from planning officers and the monitoring officer. I have not discussed these applications with anybody. I'd also like to add that I live in the vicinity of the proposed sites of both of these applications. I remain open-minded, however, and I am not biased or predetermined. Under item 10, I was unaware of the somewhat tenuous link between Councillor Laws and the applicant, and I shall, as always, remain open-minded.
Thank you. Councillor Sam Clark.
Yes, agenda item 8 obviously is in my ward of Leverington, but I will be open-minded on that. And also the same with agenda item number 10, obviously associate with councillor Laws as a fellow councillor.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Murphy.
Yes, I'm a member of Chatterstown Council, but take no part in any of the planning matters. I also know D Laws as head of planning, but not the applicant of the agenda item number 10, so I will judge this application with an open mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Joe. We now go to the main part of the meeting. Members should only make a proposal on a planning application when invited. However, I will initially be asking if anybody is going to propose the officer's recommendation. Clearly, if no such proposal is forthcoming, or if the proposal fails, I will then be looking for an alternative proposal. Members are reminded that any such proposal should be accompanied by the planning reasons for doing so. I will now hand over to Tim Williams, Senior Development Officer, to present FYR 230245-0, agenda item number 5. Tim.
Thank you, Chair. Post the publication of the committee report, there has been an update that was circulated yesterday that outlined that there was 4 further representations from members of the public all objecting to the proposals, and those reasons for objection, concern were summarised. As you can see from the update, there was no reasons to considered to alter the recommendation. As members might be, hopefully should be aware, an email has just been sent only an hour or so ago from Councillor Bowden regarding this planning application. In this email, he reaffirms his opposition in conjunction with the Town Council to the application. Furthermore, within his response, it is suggested that the financial contribution towards education be redirected towards the Manor Leisure Centre rebuild, partly as the County Council have a requirement to provide education spaces. However, it is an accepted point of planning law that a new housing development should look to offset the additional burden on education from the new residents of new dwellings. It is also considered that the proposed development would result in a direct requirement. No, it is not considered that the proposed development would result in a direct requirement for the Manor Leisure Centre to be rebuilt, particularly not at the level of contribution percentage proposed by Councillor Bowden. Therefore, the advice is that it is not considered that the proposed redirection of funds, as outlined by Councillor Bowden, would meet the SIL test. So, going on to the application itself and the report, the sort of summary there is up there. It's a description of the erection of up to 175 dwellings on the site south of 250 Drybread Road, Whittlesea, and the applicant is Alison Holmes. And the reason for committee is the number of representations submitted which conflict with the officer recommendation, including that of the Town Council. So the slide above shows 2 images. The one on the left, an OS map showing the red line application site. Access is to be taken from Drybread Road to the west. And then an aerial image shows the application site clearly as a field, with other fields surrounding it to the north and east. Just to put it in its wider context of the settlement of Whittlesea, the red line shows the application site being in the sort of northeast of the town. And then as to the development itself, it's up to 175 dwellings, a mix of open market and affordable dwellings, provision of open space, landscaping, such drainage features. As you can see there, this indicative development framework plan shows the housing elements to be in the sort of centre and to the south of the site, with the open space and a play area to the north, and then sort of landscaping buffer around all the site, but that buffer on the eastern side facing existing fields to be wider than those on the west and south. There's proposed to be a single point of access that's shown by the arrow on Drybread Road, just south of Newlands Road. There would also be an access bit further north of that with the yellow arrow, but that's just for emergency access purposes. So here's some sort of detailed drawings of the access south of Newlands Road. And this also shows some off-site highway improvement works in terms of a continuation of a pedestrian cycle link towards the south right round Drybread Road to Allison Homes' existing development to the south of Drybread Road in the direction of the southwest. So this application has been in for a while. It's been subject to extensive consultations over the last year, as outlined in section 5 of the report. There's been a number of objections from members of the public and Whittlesea Town Council. The site is non-allocated within the local plan, therefore it is classified as a windfall development. The principle of the development, well, there's a number of issues arising with the application. The principal development is a key one. So in that respect, policy LP3 of the local plan outlines the spatial strategy for the district, and within that Whittlesea is identified as another market town under the market town umbrella of the hierarchy. In relation to housing, local plan policy LP4 is split into two parts. Part A provides an approximate figure for Whittlesea of 1,000 houses over the plan period. That figure will be met with the amount of houses already built within the town, as well as others that have permissions that are yet to be built. And on a sort of wider front, the district has a 5-year land supply. However, this figure is not a ceiling, so can be higher, and the delivery of on-site affordable housing is a material consideration due to the under-delivery and high demand in the town as identified by the housing officer. Part B of policy LP4 says that small sites less than 250 units have the potential for development that are adjacent to a market town. Also, in respect of this area, part of the development plan also includes the Whittlesea neighbourhood plan. There's no housing figures within this document, but it does say that any significant new housing should be adjacent to the town and to the east of the town as well. A number of site-specific key issues are discussed in the report. Many of these are informed by the consultee responses that have been made. The first key issue is that relating to access and highways. In this respect, both with regard to the immediate consideration of the new access, but also with regard to the wider Whittlesea area. The Local Highways Authority, Cambridgeshire County Council, have confirmed that they find the proposals acceptable, subject to the provision of the off-site works as outlined on the plan above, but also passing places to Drybread Road, which is on the north boundary of the site, and also further along to the east as it comes down. The other issue is the landscape character and the visual effects. The site isn't afforded any sort of landscape protection status, but inevitably there will be impact due to the nature of the development from the landscape that exists now, an agricultural field. Most of the impact is considered to be short-term and can be mitigated by landscaping. Again, on the eastern side, and also you have the area of open space to the north. With regard to flood risk and drainage, the entire site is within flood zone 1, the area of least probability of flooding. On surface water can be dealt with on site, and just going forward. In the northeast corner you can just see about the light blue shaded area. That's roughly where the attenuation pond will be going. So in that respect, both the LL Local Lead Flood Authority and the Internal Drainage Board have got no objections subject to conditions. Anglian Water, who deal with foul water disposal, have not got any objections either. Another issue is the impact on residential amenity for both new and proposed residents. Given the size of the site, basically there is sufficient distance from existing residents that their amenity would not be compromised. And within the development, this can be ensured through detailed design. Obviously, there would be some disturbance during the construction phase, but these matters are usually dealt with by the means of a construction management plan. Another issue relates to ecology and biodiversity, both on site, of which there is sort of minimal interest given its use as a field, but also due to the site's proximity to SSI, Bass and Halley Pit to the immediate north, and then also a little bit further away, Neem Washes, which is also a SSI, but also a special protection area, special area conservation, and Ramsar site. These are international designations. And in respect of those international designations, the impact is needed to be looked at from the recreation disturbance that could be created from additional residents sort of accessing the area, walking dogs, etc. So there's been quite a lot of consultation on this application with Natural England and the County Council's ecologist as well. So in terms of on-site, there are sort of no issues, but with regard to the international sites, the conclusion reached is that there is no unlikely to be any significant effects on those designations. Therefore, an appropriate assessment under Habitats Regulation assessment is not required. Then there's the issue of community infrastructure. You've heard the views of Councillor Bowden then. Broadly, the heads of terms supplied by the applicant is in compliance with the latest viability position. This isn't quite the same as the policy position, but it's the one that's been operating with the council for a number of years now. This is £2,000 per plot and 20% affordable housing, which in this case would deliver up to 35 affordable housing units. Also, there's the off-site highways works that discussed previously, and these figures have been from the £2,000 per plot proportion between the requests made from education and health on a pro rata basis. And then finally, a few other matters relevant to the scheme. Heritage interests have been considered by the archaeologists at the County Council. At the County Council, they've also looked at the issue of mineral resources and a condition requested, and then the matter of the loss of agricultural land has been considered. So just in conclusion, while it is recognised that there's some unavoidable landscape harm to the immediate setting, this sort of needs to be set in the context of the sort of urban development that already exists to the west and the south of the site. The majority of the visual impact is localised and short-term and can be mitigated by landscaping, as well as the location of the houses towards the centre and the south of the site. As just discussed, it's considered that the principle of development is acceptable in this location, being on the edge of Whittlesea as an other market town, adjacent to the built-up area and east of the town. Whilst Whittlesea has exceeded its approximate housing targets for the local plan period through completions and permissions, this figure is not a ceiling, and the development would still increase the supply of housing, including a 20% provision of much needed on-site affordable housing. As set out in the report and summarised in this presentation, all the site-specific matters have been assessed and found to be acceptable where necessary by the imposition of conditions. And there's just some photographs of the site as well. So as such, subject to the signing of a Section 106 agreement and those conditions, the proposals would, on balance, amount to sustainable development and would accord with the development plan taken in the whole. Therefore, the recommendation to the committee is to approve the application as per section 12 of the report.
Thank you, Tim. We have one speaker on this application. I would like to invite Georgina McRae, the applicant, to make her presentation to the committee. You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. I'm Georgina McRae, Planning Director at Allison Homes, speaking in support of the proposals and to answer any questions. The application was originally submitted in November of 2022 and seeks outline planning permission for up to 175 new homes with access in detail, all other matters reserved for future consideration. Over the last 2 years, Allison Homes have worked constructively with officers and statutory consultees, including the Highways Authority, Natural England, the IDB, LLFA and the Town Council, to reach the scheme before you today. As outlined in your officer's report and presentation, the development will provide 175 new homes in a sustainable location, including a minimum of 20% affordable housing, helping to address the shortfall of affordable delivered within the district in recent years. We're already in discussions with the housing officer to ensure the detailed proposals provide for up-to-date local need. 3.6 hectares of new publicly accessible open space will be created. That's equivalent to over 1/3 of the site and provides areas for play, habitat creation and allows a smooth transition into the open countryside to the north and east. A significant net gain in on-site biodiversity will be delivered with a predicted 13.8% increase in on-site habitats and 90% increase in hedgerows. Financial contributions of £2,000 a plot will be payable towards the NHS, East of England Ambulance and Education Services. In respect of highways, a package of mitigation measures equivalent to around £250,000 have been agreed to mitigate the impact of the development. These include a 3-metre footway cycleway, which will be extended to the site, providing a safe connection to and from the primary school and wider networks. A series of passing places will be delivered along Drybread Road to the north and east to allow improve access to the A605. And welcome travel packs will be provided to all new residents, which will include the provision of bus and cycle vouchers to encourage sustainable travel. As concluded in your officer's report, it's considered the proposals would amount to sustainable development and would accord with the development plan when taken as a whole. There are no outstanding objections from technical consultees, and it's considered that subject to the detailed design at reserve matters stage, the site has potential to deliver a high quality living environment for both future and existing residents. I hope you're able to support this application today in line with the officer's recommendation, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like to invite members to put questions to Ms McRae. Members, if you would like to do so, to ask a question, please can you raise your hand? Councillor.
Hello, Georgina. I'm very interested to discuss further about the cycleway, first of all, and then the access to and from the site along Drybread Road when you mentioned the passing places. So, first of all, with regard to the cycle lane, the cycle lane would invariably pass several roads coming onto Drybread Road that are quite busy. So what mitigating factors would you put in place to protect children that are crossing Victory Avenue, Coronation Avenue and a series of busy roads that feed into Drybread Road? So I'll ask that first and then I'll come on to Drybread Road and the passing places.
I'll take that one first. So in terms of the cycleway, this is an extension of an already agreed cycleway which is being constructed at the moment. So the detail of that is now agreed with the Highways Authority, and we're extending from the corner on the southwest of this development up to the access point and then within the site. So these proposals don't actually cross those existing points that you're talking about. That detail has been agreed and is in construction.
So I'm slightly confused because you just said in your report that the cycleway would go from the site to the school.
No, so it doesn't go, it extends on to the existing, which would connect into the school. So the works to the school are approved as part of a previous development to the south. They're being constructed at the moment. We connect on to that. So the improved connectivity to the school will be extended to this site.
So just for a point of clarity then, your cycleway will just be for the length of your development up to that corner of Drybread Road, and then to connect on to anything that's being delivered by another agency.
That's correct. It's been delivered by Allison Homes on an earlier site.
Thank you. To come on to the passing places, so is it Allison Holmes's view then that the cars exiting this proposed site will turn both left to go down Drybread Road and right Drybread Road out to the 605? So cars will go both ways. Is that correct? You don't have a preferred direction of travel for the residents exiting this site?
Our transport assessment suggests cars will come out and turn left down Drybread Road. That was a conversation, a long discussion with the Highways Authority in terms of we didn't necessarily want to be encouraging people to turn right by delivering passing places. And they were reduced, the number of passing places were reduced off the back of that. But in terms of our transport assessment surveys, that suggests vehicles will turn left.
So it suggests that vehicles are turning left. In your report, you said you were going to add more passing places, though, for vehicles that are turning right to access the 605. Is that correct?
That's correct. So that's at the request of the Highways Authority to mitigate the impacts of development. That is what they see as a requirement for the scheme, which we've agreed to deliver.
And how many passing places are you likely to put in place? I believe there are only a couple along there at the moment.
So on the northern boundary of the site, there will be two new, this is all subject to detailed design through the condition discharge, but there at the moment there's proposed two passing places on the northern boundary of the site, and then when you turn the corner going straight down to the A605, they're actually agreed. I'm looking to officers for confirmation. I think they're agreed on an existing permission. If that permission doesn't come forward, we deliver those, and I believe there's three going on that north-south extent.
I would, knowing the area as I do, I would struggle to see along that northern section how you'd get around the drainage ditches there. And also my concern would be that passing places only possibly allow for a couple of cars at any one time, and there would be a backlog. It's a busy road as it is, with a Whittlesea gridlock. People use it as a cut through, and so I would be concerned that passing places would not adequately mitigate the build-up of traffic. But thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks for your presentation. My question is related to your report saying that you work with IDBs. Now, we live in the Fens and we know how it floods around here, and drainage is our major concern. Can you please elaborate more detailed how you work with IDBs?
Yeah, so the site obviously sits within an area controlled by IDB. None of the ditches surrounding the site are actually IDB controlled, so it's been a lot of work with the LLFA, but the North Level Drainage Board have been consulted and confirmed they also have no objections to the proposals. The site is in flood zone 1, so is technically at the lowest risk of flooding. The surface water is managed on site, so through a combination of swales, permeable paving and an attenuation basin, and then outfalls at a controlled rate to the northeast of the site, so that's at 12.6 litres a second, which is agreed with the LLFA and the IDB. And that's designed to cater for a 1 in 100 year storm event, plus then the 40% for climate change. we will have to get formal consent from the IDB for any outfalls or any impact on their managed ditches that we outfall into. But that's a summary of the surface water.
Thank you. Councillor Murphy.
Yeah, thanks for just two things. I notice on the top of the area there's play areas and public open spaces and things like that. Will you be having a management company to run these, or are you going to leave it to the poor old Fenland District Council?
The Section 106 agreement as drafted at the moment is flexible. We have been in discussions with the Town Council as to whether they want to take any of that, all of it, play area. So basically there's flexibility in that legal agreement at the moment. We can set up a management company. That tends to be what happens on a lot of our sites where councils don't want to take it. But commuted sums are allowed for if councils do want to take that. So in short, there's flexibility. It's not, there's been no decision made on that yet.
Well, I'll make a decision for you, shall I? Because I'm part of the, my portfolio is part of the environment and play areas comes under that.
Yeah.
And FDC do not take over any play areas at all these days. It's up to the town council if they want to,
Yeah.
or we've tried to get you to do a management company because that's the easiest way of doing it.
Yeah, that's fine. The Section 106 allows for town and management. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah. And the second thing is, when the building starts, when you start on them there, are you going to have wheel cleaning vehicle there? Because we had problems after problems after problems at the other end of Whittlesea, where the Aldi store is, all around there. And we were called out one day because of coming out of these application sites. And we took a lorry down there, and we finished up with 10 tonne out of the gutters on the roadside there. And 10 tonne is ridiculous. So if you clean them inside the area, it's a lot better than coming out and putting on our roads. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. We will have wheel cleaning facilities, and they will be secured as part of the construction management plan.
Right. Thank you very much.
Councillor Mufton.
Thanks, Chair. Just in follow up to what Councillor Murphy just asked you about the public spaces and the play areas. In the case that the town council doesn't take them on, Fenland doesn't, and you have management companies to look after them. Now, who's going to pay for this? Is it the residents? Is it through service charge? Who's going to pay for them?
Yeah, it will be set up as resident management companies are, with a service charge fixed. So anyone buying those properties know what that service charge is. They then become directors of that resident management company. But Alison Homes will look after that public open space until it's completed and transferred.
Thank you. I know that, but my question is, will you make the residents aware of these before they purchase the properties?
Yes, we have to, yeah.
Thank you. A couple of questions. A lot of mention of highways and off-site works. Whittlesea is plagued at the minute with a lot of traffic problems. When will the off-site works be carried out? Will that be before you start to build?
I believe the conditions are drafted are for them to be completed before we occupy any homes, so they'll be delivered early. It may be that we're doing enabling works on site while we're delivering the 278 works, but certainly we can't occupy any properties as those conditions are drafted until the works have been completed.
Okay, because obviously a concern is with passing places, you've got lorries and HGVs going down there both ways. That's a concern. Following on from that, and something Councillor Murphy mentioned regarding wheel wash facilities, will you also have a road sweeper within that agreement as well?
Yes, we do put road sweepers as standard in our construction management plans.
Thank you. And then build out. What's the build out programme for affordable homes v private homes, and over what period are you building out or looking to build these?
It's difficult to give a timescale outline, but our intention is is to have a reserve matters application submitted and approved as soon as we can and start delivery on site. We do look as standard to deliver affordable housing quite early on in the development. We deliver a lot of sites partnered with registered providers. So as I said in my presentation, that 20% is a minimum. We do often seek to increase that with some more additional affordable housing if registered providers are interested in that on site. So it's very much in our interest to deliver the affordable early, and sometimes more than is secured through the 106.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor.
Hello again. The officer mentioned the triple SI sites, Baton Halley Pits and the Noon Washes. Obviously, we're building a considerable amount of houses. There's going to be a lot more people potentially wandering down there, maybe with dogs. What could you do to preserve those triple SI sites from any kind of damage, any kind of ecological damage, you know, because there are some rare species on those sites?
Yeah, thank you. We did, so as part of the kind of 2-year application process, we've done a lot of work on this. A full habitat regulation assessment has been prepared, submitted and assessed. That included a recreational pressure assessment on those sites. What that concluded and resulted in changes to the development framework was to increase the areas of open space on site, to provide alternative walking routes. There's loops, or there will be loops throughout the site to provide opportunities for dog walkers to stay on site rather than going walking up to the those other sites. We also met with the RSPB who manage the site to see if there's anything we can do to work with them. They didn't consider there was. They didn't feel like the kind of, I think it's just short of a two kilometre walk on mainly a road with no footpath was enough of a deterrent to not encourage necessarily too many people from this site to walk up there. So I suppose in short it has been assessed in full with Natural England, with the RSPB and with the council's ecologists, and what we're doing on site is considered to be appropriate mitigation.
Thank you. I don't know if they went in the middle of the night, because I would say there are quite a few people walking down there, because it is a quiet road and it is a dead end. So a lot of people do walk down there already with their dogs. But thank you for answering my question.
Any further questions? No? Thank you. I would now like to invite members to put questions to officers. We also have, I believe, 2 members of Cambs County Council Highways here as well who we could put questions to. Councillor Seneclough.
To officers and the members of CCC Highways, Whittlesea is at gridlock. It is facing an unprecedented amount of traffic chaos at the moment from a number of different factors. How can you possibly get around the problem of the Whittlesea traffic gridlock at the moment from an extra 175 properties that are being proposed, particularly with them, I mean, at either end, whichever way they turn out of Dry Bread Road, they're going to go onto the 605 and they're going to cross the bridge that has a lot of structural problems at the moment. And you've got the B1040, which floods for a significant amount of time. So how are you going to deal with all of that? How are these people going to get to work or to school or wherever it is they're travelling to along the 605?
Through the chair. Whittlesea is a very challenging place in terms of transport, as you've already alluded to. And at present, we don't have a scheme which gives an overall solution to this problem. There isn't a wider Whittlesea scheme that may come forward in the future. It may not. I don't know whether there's anything in the pipeline. With these plan applications that we are looking at today, it's about demonstrable harm. And we have to look at whether the harm is significant enough for each individual application to allow us to raise an objection to it. And if we can reduce that harm to an acceptable level by looking at methods of encouraging active travel, then we cannot refuse an application. I know there's a bigger problem overall in Whittlesea, but because we're looking at smaller applications that aren't bundled up as one, we have to look at them individually. And individually, the harm that we're looking at isn't significant enough for us to say we have to object, even though strategically and overall, we know that Whittlesea needs looking at. One of the things we usually do is if we've got a scheme, or if we know there's something coming in the pipeline, we can get finance towards that. Here, we don't have a scheme. Again, and I reiterate, we did have a potential scheme to look at the two roundabouts in Whittlesea. It was an active travel scheme, so to get people across those roundabouts, so encourage people to actually use those roundabouts by walk or cycle, because they're not great at the moment. My understanding is that scheme was not brought forward for whatever reason.
Thank you. So there is no scheme in place at present. You did mention early on in your response something, I didn't quite catch what you said, that something may come forward. What was it you said?
I know that there is and I've just looked on our plan here of, I'll be very careful, potential areas that we're looking at, so I won't use the word scheme because there isn't one. And I noted that Whittlesea in the A605 is flagged up as a potential area of interest. So that's why I could say that something may come forward, because obviously someone has identified it as an area of interest. We, as a county, have lots and lots of areas of interest. It's going to be whether this is considered to be higher up in the list than maybe other interventions and schemes that we are looking at in the rest of the county.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Can I just ask, well, obviously we know at the present time Whittlesea has got a problem. It's probably a bit of an unfair question, but just to sort of get a gauge on this, these houses would not be built tomorrow. So we suddenly wouldn't have 175 or however many cars tomorrow. Do we know what the programme is, A, for the bridge regarding repairs to that, and a time frame roughly, and also the second bridge, which is by the Dog and Doublet, which also causes problems after flooding? We still have traffic lights there.
Unfortunately, I don't have that information about the bridge. I know that it's being worked on by one of the county's teams. I'm quite happy to go away and find that information out, and I can send it to you if that's something you want me to do.
Thank you. It would have been useful to have had that information today. But okay, thank you. Any further questions, Ross?
Just to come in there, would you be able to provide that information? I'd find it very useful as a Whittlesea ward councillor.
Absolutely. I can make some inquiries and I can get back to you on that.
Thank you. Chair, I do have a question for the officers. Should I ask that now? Oh, okay. So, planning policy LP7 states that development of an urban extension must be planned and implemented in a coordinated way through an agreed overarching board concept plan that is linked to the timely delivery of key infrastructure. What we've just heard is that we don't have from Allison Homes, we don't have a timeline, and from CCC Highways, we don't have a timeline. So I find this really concerning in relation to policy LP7. So I wondered if you could just talk about that a little bit.
Thank you, through you, Chairman. Essentially, this site is not considered to be an urban extension, given that it's under 249 dwellings. Therefore, it's effectively classed as a windfall site on the edge of the town, rather than a strategic allocation identified within the local plan, requiring the provision of a broad concept plan. So, because of that, the size of the application, it doesn't fall within that requirement of policy.
Thank you, but the point remains the same, doesn't it? That everything needs to tally up in terms of development planning, implementation. That's still very necessary, and particularly with other developments that are in the pipeline.
Through you, Chairman, it does, and that's part of the consideration that's been given to this application in terms of the highway considerations, the other sort of considerations in respect of the delivery of infrastructure as well through the sort of Section 106 package that's mentioned in the report. I think, unfortunately, though, because, as I say, this site and indeed the site that's the subject of item 6 on the agenda, which are obviously very closely located, because both of those sites are individually below the 249 windfall threshold in the local plan, they have to be, effectively, they have to wash their own face, and sort of not a great deal more than that. That's all that is required through policy, essentially.
Yeah, I understand that, but for me, the problems remain, but thank you for your response.
Councillor Murphy.
Thanks. It really goes back on to what you were saying, Councillor Marks. It is a busy road. I mean, I travelled in it quite a bit myself, and it is a nuisance with the bridge. I've got to say that. But by the time, like you said, by the time these houses get built, that bridge hopefully, I mean, it's taken 3 years to repair it now. I mean, it will be done by then, and it will be a class 1 improvement. The other thing we have is that people, I'm in charge of refuse and recycling, that sort of thing. And our refuse vehicles, when they go down there on a Tuesday morning early, get called everything because they've got a job to do. But they're only there an hour, and it's all gone. That's 1 hour per week. So some of these things with what is happening now with the congestion of traffic is only being brought on by people saying about the different things. I mean, I go through that. I mean, I went through there yesterday, and we cooed to get over the bridge, but we got over the bridge and we sailed straight through with no problems whatsoever. And I think a lot of what's going on at the moment is being talked up and not thought out, to be honest. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Any further questions? Councillor Croft.
I live in Whittlesea. Last week...
Sorry, is this a question to officers, or is this debate?
It's just to point out.
So shall we have that in questions? In debate. Thank you. One question I do have to the planning department is regarding the 106 money. We've read within that, and we've got this email from Councillor Bowden. Would it be possible, when it says that the head of planning will look at the distribution, that it's also agreed that the chair or the vice chair will also agree that at the time of distribution, please?
Through you, Chairman, if that's what the committee wants to do when it comes to making a decision, then that's what the committee wants to do.
Okay, so it can be conditioned. Thank you. No? Okay. Thank you, everyone. I would now like to invite members to debate in the item in respect of material planning considerations relevant to the application. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. Councillor Senniclough.
So now I'll come into my point through you, Chair. I take issue that the point Councillor Murphy said that it's being talked up. Last Friday, it was bumper to bumper from Whittlesea through Ponders Bridge and out back onto the 605 near where the crane place is. There was an accident. The B1040 was open, but all it takes is a slight hold up, an accident of sorts, the 605 for there to be a hold up. When the B1040 was flooded for the last 2 weeks, the queues from the bridge went all the way to the what we call the television roundabout. It impacts people's lives. People are trying to get to work. People are trying to get to school. It is a huge issue. It's not talked up at all. It is the reality of everyday life in Whittlesea.
Thank you. If I could respond first, I lived in Ramsey for a number of years, used to travel quite to Thorney and also to Boston. Whittlesea has always had a problem. Before even the flyover was there, it had the railway gates. I've known it stacked back to stand ground on numerous occasions. I think certainly the overpass has certainly helped. We can't get around the flooding at the Dog and Doublet, but I don't personally believe by feeding in these vehicles over a period of time, and it's not all going to be tomorrow, as we've already heard, and hopefully by then the bridge will be repaired, that actually it will make that much difference by adding more vehicles and causing more traffic problems. I think once the bridge is repaired, that will certainly help matters. And people also find different ways for Whittlesea to go into Peterborough, up to Ponders Bridge and that way, and as you've already said. So...
Yeah, actually, you're still on the thunder, pretty. I mean, the flooding happens every year. So it's one of those things, you can't stop it, you won't stop the flooding there, you can't stop it there, and it is a problem every year. But we know it's there and that's it. The other thing is, when you say about accidents, well, accidents do happen. They happen everywhere. Our High Street the other week was closed because of an accident in it. It happens in every place you go. So I can't see any problems in that at all.
Through you, Chair, Councillor Murphy, I think you missed my point about accidents. Yes, they do happen, unfortunately, but all it takes, my point was a slight hold up on an already heavily congested road. That is more, it causes more chaos than ordinary smooth flowing roads. And to take your point, Councillor Marks, yes, Whittlesea has always been a problem. I have lived there for 3 years, but I've seen a notable increase since the 2 developments built on the 605. And I do not think it's fair to say that people should find alternate routes through other smaller villages such as Ponders Bridge, because that's just relocating the problem elsewhere and other villages are having to suffer the traffic.
Thank you. Any further debate? No. Okay, thank you very much. So thank you, members. Does any officers have any points of clarification? No. Okay. Do I have a proposer to go with officers' recommendation to grant planning permission? Councillor Murphy. Do I have a seconder to go with the recommendation? I'll second it. Okay, we will now go to the vote. If you support the proposal to go with officer's recommendation, please raise your hand.
That's 4 votes, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. If you're against the proposal to go with officer's recommendation, please raise your hand. Councillor Senniclough. I can now declare the committee decision is to approve this application. I will now hand over to Tim Williams to present agenda item number 6.
Right, thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is a second application
Sorry, excuse me. Can we take a 5-minute break so we can just resolve this, please?
Mute their microphones, please.
Okay, I will now hand over again to Tim Williams to present FYR 230705-0, agenda item number 6.
Thank you, Chair. Just a summary of the application now on the screen. This one's slightly larger proposal for up to 249 dwellings, again outline with matters committed in respect of access. The location is north of Eastry Road in Whittlesea. The applicant this time is Rose Homes. And again, the reason for planning committee is the number of representations submitted which conflict with the officer recommendation, including that of the town council. So, two images of the site. If the image looks familiar, it's because it is in proximity but not adjacent to the site we've just discussed in item 5. You can see it's to the south east of it, with the red line showing the site, again an agricultural field, flattish agricultural field, north of Eastry Road, and to the west of Drybread Road. Fields to the north and the east, part of the strategic allocation to the west, and the aerial image is a little bit out of date, but to the south of the site there's an Aldi supermarket that's recently been built, as well as housing, which is just north of the pond that you can see there. And again, this is just an overview showing the site in its wider context of Whittlesea. And as you'd expect, it's a larger site, given there's proposed to be more homes in this one. So the application is for up to 249 dwellings, space, provision for open space, landscaping, suds, drainage, etc. So it's just an indicative plan that you're seeing there. 2 access points. The primary one is onto Eastry Road, that can be seen going off there to the north of Eastry Road. That's for around about 200 units, and then a secondary access of Eastry Road and Drybread Road. So a slight widening of Drybread Road at the southern end where it joins Eastry Road. I think there should be some plans of this as sort of engineering type plans, but that's the access arrangements for Eastry Road and some of the changes to the road itself in terms of sort of road markings and also crossing places. And then that is showing the secondary access and the widening of the southern part of Drybread Road, adjacent to Gothic Farm. So again, there's been extensive consultation on this application for a period of well over a year. Again, there's been quite a bit of public objection, probably about half of that to the Drybread Road application, plus the town council. So again, it's I'll just probably show you some photos I've got of the site as well. So this is taken from Eastry Road, the red line. It's sort of looking, it would be looking eastwards. Aldi's would be not far on the right hand side there. So that's the point, the primary access point on Eastry Road, between those red lines. That is taken from inside the hedgerow on Eastry Road, looking sort of northwards towards over the field, with the new housing in the strategic allocation there that can be seen on the left-hand side. This is taken from the north-east corner of the site, looking southwards. You've got Drybread Road there, going towards the A605 of the application side on the right. The red line pointing towards where the secondary access would come in. And then you see some of the new homes south of Eastry Road there in the distance. And again, that's really looking against from the northeast corner across panorama across the site. You can see the ditch forming the northern boundary, and you can see from the other one as well, Drybread Road on that eastern side. There's no hedgerow; it is quite open. So you can see across to the the new houses east of Violet Avenue and those south of East Street Road. So once again, this is a non-allocated site in the local plan. The principle of the development, well, you know, essentially is the same as you just heard in the Dry Bread Road application as well, so I don't intend to repeat that. I probably have jumped the gun, actually. I should have mentioned that, there was an update from a couple of extra members of the public, and there was, of course, the comments from Councillor Bowden, so apologies for that. But just going back to the main issues, aside of the principle of development that's been discussed, there is the highways here. So yes, 2 access points, which again the local highways authority have considered are adequate. There's a range of sort of mitigation measures that is outlined in, I think it's paragraph 1.7, 10.7, showing a mitigation package both immediately adjacent to the site and towards the town as well along East Street Road. Once again, in terms of landscape character, it's a similar situation to that in Dry Bread Road. Very sort of, there are views across, and some of these are localised. There are some wider views from the east, but these can be mitigated by landscaping. And then there's a flood risk and drainage. Again, the site is in flood zone 1, lowest risk of drainage, with consultees have considered that the arrangements are acceptable in principle, both in respect of surface water and foul water drainage. There's also a little bit of a slight difference in this scheme, that there is an issue of coalescence between Whittlesea and the village of East Street to the east. This site is sort of more closer to East Street than the one at Dry Bread Road to the north. So you can see in the aerial picture there, East Street, the village of East Street, which is accessed along the A4605 to the right-hand side. So the issue of coalescence between Whittlesea and this village is a matter that has been considered in the made neighbourhood plan. There's a policy within that plan stating that there should be a distinct separation between the two settlements, and within their plan a green buffer has been identified to sort of ensure this, essentially. But in respect of the neighbourhood plan, this buffer that is shown within it is to the east of Dry Bread Road, so the site under consideration is not included within the green buffer, although it is rightly acknowledged that the gap would be reduced between the existing urban development of Whittlesea and East Street. So in terms of residential amenity, again, existing and new residents, there is sufficient space, so these can be considered at the design stage, and a construction management plan can essentially deal with on-site construction issues. The ecology and biodiversity issues, again, similar on-site issues. There is sort of limited interest given the nature of the land. And again, there's been a lot of toing and froing with consultees, Natural England and the ecologists regarding the wider interest. And this has found that any significant effects are unlikely upon the internationally designated sites to the north. With regard to community infrastructure, this is the same as the Dry Bread Road application insofar that the applicant is willing, in their heads of terms submitted with the application, to pay £2,000 per plot, which is a portion between the infrastructure requests requested by education, NHS, etc. And also the 20% on-site affordable housing, which would deliver up to 50 affordable dwellings on this site. Just going back to the highway, some of the mitigation improvements include East Street Road, footway improvements, as shown, as shown there. Some other matters of relevance, again, heritage interests. There's been archaeological appraisal of these. Again, mineral resources, given that the land is underlying with sand and gravel, and there's been consideration of the loss of agricultural land and peat. So the summary and conclusions is the application site is not allocated for development in either the local or neighbourhood plan. It would accord with the spatial strategy set out in policy LP3, whilst the housing proposed would further exceed the approximate housing figures for Whittlesea, given part A of local plan policy LP4. This would not in itself be contrary to that part of the policy and further increase the supply of housing and provided much needed on-site affordable dwellings up to 50. Therefore, the number of homes applied for in this location is acceptable because it's under the 250 limit for or which the policy is LP4 is written, and so it's therefore in conformity with Part B of policy LP4 and policy 1 of the neighbourhood plan. As well as the principal development, the application and the report has considered a number of site-specific key issues arising, being informed by relevant consultation responses where the proposals are adjudged to be in conformity with relevant local and neighbourhood plan policies regarding the new access, highways, flood risk and drainage, residential amenity and ecology and biodiversity. The above is notwithstanding the fact that there will be an inevitable impact on the character of the site and immediate surroundings, and also that the full amount of infrastructure contributions cannot be secured in light of the current viability position. So the proposed development would result in on-site delivery of 50 affordable houses, and this is of significance given the identified need within Whittlesea and the under-provision of affordable housing within the district. And the recommendation is that on balance to approve the application subject to the signing of a Section 106 agreement and finalisation of planning condition.
Thank you, Tim. We have one speaker on this application. I would like to invite Michael Braithwaite, the agent, to make his presentation to the committee. Mr. Braithwaite, you have 5 minutes when comfortable.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Just to confirm, I'm Michael Braithwaite. I'm a chartered town planner, working with the Robert Dowd's consultancy agent for the applicant Rose Homes EA Limited, based in Whittlesea. I'm accompanied at the table by Dino Biagioni, who's the managing director of Rose Homes, who might be able to prompt in answering any of the questions that you have. So thank you for the opportunity to speak about the application for 249 dwellings on the edge of Whittlesea. As your officers stated, the development is in accordance with the local plan, which allows the development of up to 249 dwellings at sites on the edge of larger settlements such as Whittlesea, unless the benefit of development is outweighed by the harm. The development will ensure that housing supply for Whittlesea, specifically in Fenland District Council more generally, is met into the future. The targets set in the local plan, as your officer said in the previous debate, are a floor and not a ceiling. Although in outline, the application or the proposed development would accord with national and local policies regarding meeting housing need, providing open space and affordable housing, providing appropriate drainage strategy within the site, preserve and enhance ecology and diversity, including the safeguarding of the Neen washes with the appropriate alphabet soup responsible to their designation as European and nationally important sites. It's not to be a risk of flooding, and will not raise the risk of flooding elsewhere. The surface water drainage system will be managed on site to maintain discharge at existing predicted greenfield levels. It will discharge into the wider IDB network. Discussions have taken place through the creation or the development of the surface water drainage strategy with the IDB, the Local Flood Authority, the Environment Agency, and so on. We'll maintain highway safety again. As part of the application process, a number of pre-application discussions were held with the Highways Authority to try and agree the approach towards the provisions taken, and those discussions have continued on in a positive fashion through the application process. The development, or the residents of the development, would have access to the existing jobs and services provided by Whittlesea and in the wider area, including the new supermarket being provided to the south of the site, including but not restricted to. As the officers also said, the neighbourhood plan sets out the issue of potential coalescence with Eastry and provides a buffer zone which lies to the east of Drybread Road, whereas the development before view today is to the west of Drybread Road, behind the existing development on the eastern part of the site frontage. We're aware of the range of objections made to the application, both from statutory consultees in the past and from local members of the public regarding highway safety, impacts on local services including healthcare and education, loss of open countryside and agricultural land, impacts on the amenity of existing residents, impacts on heritage and loss of agricultural land. Through the application process, the applicant has provided further information, including a report on extensive agricultural, archaeological investigations, assessment of potential impact on the Neen washes, a range of highway improvements to the surrounding road network to ease vehicular and pedestrian traffic in this admittedly problematic area. The statutory consultees have withdrawn their objections subject to the submitted information and the information on the imposition of the conditions and Section 106 requirements proposed by your officers. The application, the conditions set out a number of obligations for the development, including early agreement before reserve matters are submitted for a phasing plan to gauge when the various aspects of the development will take place, develop key aspects of provision and management of open space, off-site highways provision, which are defined in the conditions. Thank you. And therefore, we hope that approving a policy compliant application for 249 dwellings would reduce the pressure to bring forward allocations through the emerging local plan, which also the committee will support the officer's recommendation and approve the application in front of you today. Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like to invite members to put questions to Mr. Braithwaite. If you would like to ask a question, please raise your hand. Councillor Seneclough.
Hello, Mr. Braithwaite. Thank you for your introduction there, and I appreciate that you were time restricted. So you glossed over a few things because I think you were time restricted. So I'd like to give you the opportunity to elaborate a little further on the highway improvements and the pedestrian safety in relation to this application, where it's situated on the 605, close, as you say, opposite the new supermarket.
Well, the a range of highway improvements, including the new access road, off-site junction improvements, widening of other junctions are proposed and set out in the report provided as part of the application and promoted and agreed by the Highways Authority. So these schemes are as discussed and agreed with the Highways Authority.
Through you, Chair. Well, thank you for your response, Mr. Braithwaite. Will there be an additional pedestrian crossing to allow access to the supermarket?
No, there's no additional crossing being provided over the main road now.
Thank you for your response.
Councillor Murphy.
Thanks so much. Just as a matter of interest, how long would it take to build out 249 dwellings?
There's many different answers to that question. Most of it is dependent on how quickly the houses are built, are sold. I think we can possibly assume that a development of 249 dwellings will come forward probably about 30 a year. Perhaps a bit more than that.
30 a year,
40 plus.
40 plus a year.
Yeah.
So it's several years, and in other words, that's what I'm trying to get out of you. It's not, because with these multi things like this, that they're not done on the day, are they? You know, it takes such a long time to do them, and I think you tend to forget the time scale it's all on, to be honest with you.
Yes, keep in mind that there's a need to agree a phasing plan and then submit the reserved matters application, so it's probably going to be 18 months to 2 years before development starts on the site, and then the development will start partway through a year, so you're looking at probably a 5-year development programme at least for the site.
That's right. The other thing is, I mean, I'll ask the same question that I did the one before. Wheel cleaning and also road, because where you're talking about Aldi, I mean, that's where I was talking about earlier on, and it was a shame. It really was. It was terrible. It's disgusting, to be perfectly honest with you. Are you going to look after that and make sure there is nothing there?
Yes, that would be good practice for the developer, and it will be covered by the construction management plan, which needs to be agreed by the authority as well. So.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And I can't see the other question I asked. I can't see any open spaces on yours. Is there any or not?
There is open spaces. If Mr. Williams can go to the indicative layout, we've spread them around the site. So it's in the northeast corner, the northwest corner, just to the east of the site access, various areas which will be sort of multifunctional areas. And I say that this is an indicative layout. Which tries to echo the requirement of the drainage strategy, as well as picking up on an opportunity to provide circuits to walk around the site, as the previous applicant was talking about, to encourage people to exercise within the site rather than being stuck at the end of a cul-de-sac and not being able to wander around the site. So it's rather than just having one location, it's having different places for people to walk around and access around the site.
And would you look after those as a management or not?
I think my client's quite strenuous in his preference to being a management company, yes. That's, obviously, if it did go to the parish council or town council, that would need to be at terms agreed with them, but I don't think that's likely to be happening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. So just a question about flooding and that's rainwater, surface water attenuation provisions you've made. Can you please just elaborate on what you have to mitigate flooding, and do you have, as we heard the previous lady who spoke, do you have any arrangements with IDBs or Anglian Water to contain flooding? Thank you.
Yeah, so it's a key issue, because not only do we discharge, or would the development discharge water into the IDB system, that ultimately discharges into the Neen washes as well. So there's a great need to make sure that the quantity and quality of water is controlled within the site, to make sure that doesn't lead to overwhelming the drainage system, or indeed polluting the Neen washes. So yes, there was discussions with the IDB as part of the production of the drainage strategy that submitted to support the planning application.
Thank you. What have you put in place, or what are you putting in place? I know you've discussed with the IDBs, but what actions are you actually going to take?
Well, there's a range of measures would be included, and again, it's an in-principle approach that will yet need to be agreed in detail. What they're looking at is provision of roadside swales, which serve to filter out the water and control the water, rather than just putting them into a drain which gets it off the site as quickly as possible. There'll be a system, as you can see, there's indicative ponds within that layout to make sure that the swales discharge into that system and then get controlled on the way out, and then there's various mechanisms which, as a planner, I'm not going to try and repeat the names of which manage then the discharge into the drain. It's not just going out of a pipe out of the lake at the northeast corner, but it will be that one controlled discharge point.
Thank you. Okay, if I'd ask a question, we've heard from Councillor Senate-Clough regarding traffic. Okay, one of the biggest concerns along there is vehicles waiting to get onto site, especially heavy goods vehicles, if planning was given. What have you got as mitigation? And also regarding parking overnight and stuff, where will you be parking vehicles? Because there's no local parking as far as I'm aware for HGVs. Are you putting curfew times on?
During the construction phase, yes, yeah. Well, again, these will be matters that will be covered by the construction management plan, and generally you would expect there'd be a compound on site and that there'd be parking near the compound. Just checking that that's the current process for Rose Homes. So those issues will be there. There'll be access arrangements needing to be agreed as part of that mechanism. And obviously parking off-site allows, off-street rather, allows for the wheel cleaning and all the measures like that to be provided.
Thank you. Councillor Senate-Clough.
Hello, thank you. Through you, Chair. I've got a couple more questions. So it seems to me that the way forward now is through management companies. There's a neighbouring development where several residents have complained about the way in which they've been let down by a management company. So my concern is, how would you ensure that the management company is reputable and not going to ultimately, as much as you can as developers, ultimately make sure that the residents are looked after for the money that they put into the management company? So that's my first question.
My client reminds me that residents will generally be directors of the management company once it's fully up and running. So it'll be set up, one would imagine, by Rose Homes in the first instance, and then ultimately handed over to the residents to manage themselves. The same could be said for any other form of management as well. If it's managed by the town council or the district council, there might be issues with that as well. But and then the residents have one step remote because they're then voting for the councillors that manage those organisations.
Thank you. Again, through you, Chair. Coming back again to the issue of safety, pedestrian safety, cyclist safety. I'm not sure which school, whether it's New Road or Alderman Jacobs, which school this developed proposed site will feed into. But if it is New Road, then there'll be a large number, presumably of primary school age children crossing the road. And so I am concerned about the safety of those children travelling to school. And I'd also, so that's a question, I'll let you come in on that first, and any mitigating factors regarding the safety of children travelling to school, and then I'll ask one more safety question.
Well, it's the Highways Authority will be able to deal with these issues, but we are looking at highways improvements which look at formalising the crossing points on the roads, whether it's the drop curbs and the tactile pavement, to make sure that the crossing is more obvious and safe. They're looking at arrangements to the junctions, and say these will be all set out in the transport assessment and the road safety audits that are already submitted as part of the planning application.
Thank you. My final question for you, Chair, is the junction. I'm not absolutely certain from the map that's shown, will the proposed new access road come out directly opposite the road to the new Aldi? How will those line up? I wonder if you can talk a bit more about that, because potentially you've got two roads coming out onto the 605 from opposite directions.
Sorry, my finger slipped. The junctions are staggered, and there's the highways engineers ensure that there's spaces for queuing traffic to get in and out of the different junctions to make sure that people queuing to get through one junction aren't queuing in front of another one. And we're reducing the speed limit as part of the proposal is to reduce the speed limit to make sure that traffic will be travelling at 30 miles an hour along this stretch of East Road.
Thank you.
Or should I say limited to 30 miles an hour? What speed people actually travel is...
Councillor Murphy?
Yes, back again about the crossing. Do you think it would be more beneficial to have a crossing there? Because it is exactly opposite Aldi. There's 249 houses. People are not going to take their cars across the road to go into Aldi, are they? They're going to walk across the road. So I would have thought it'd be more beneficial to have a crossing there, and we should also calm down the traffic along that road as well.
There's a question about what's beneficial and what's required to charge upon a developer, and here to some extent we might be straying back onto the wider schemes for Whittlesea. I agree. I would hope that many people will walk to Aldi and across the road, but say it's. The provision of a scheme is beyond the remit of what can be required from a developer to provide for this particular scheme. I express no views as to whether it's beneficial or not, but it's down to what can be justified. Yeah.
I certainly think it would be.
Perhaps that's a question we can put to highways. Any further questions? No? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would like to now invite members to put questions to officers and also highways. Councillor Murphy, you might as well start.
What will come in, it's fresh in my mind. Would it be any beneficial? Well, I think it would be beneficial. Would you think it would be more beneficial to have a crossing there than an open road? Being as it's so close, I mean, you're not going to take... I wouldn't take a car across the road just to go into Aldi or anything like that.
Thank you. Apologies for the confusion, but as part of the access proposals, there will be a pedestrian refuge crossing across the A605 within the vicinity of the access, as well as a relocated refuge as part of the development to the south. There is also an existing toucan crossing at the southwest corner of the site, which will facilitate crossing on routes to the schools.
You say about a refuge, but that is the road wide enough for a refuge? Because you need a fair bit of room in the middle of the road, don't you, to get to a refuge of it? Surely it's easier to put a zebra crossing straight across.
The access proposals have been reviewed extensively by our development management team, and they're satisfied that the road width is suitable to facilitate the works.
Okay. Thank you.
A question for highways. Currently, the speed restriction is 30. It's a very busy stretch of road. You've got already a new estate, the Barrett estate. You've got the new supermarket. You've got Dry Bread Road, and now you're going to have a further new access road. There is a drop curb refuge crossing further up near the roundabout. And you've also got the traffic accelerating off the roundabout. There's a lot going on there, and you're going to put, where are you proposing to put this other crossing that you just mentioned?
Sorry, yeah, so there's one refuge that is to the east of the eastern access to the Aldi access, and then there's another refuge between the access to the BDW site to the south and the development, this site.
Through you, Chair. So just for clarity, it will be to the east of the Aldi, the proposed refuge crossing. Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, couple of questions. Firstly, again, hearing what Councillor St-Clough has said previously regarding traffic. On a traffic survey, have you actually worked out, or do we have any figures for who will turn left and head towards Wisbeach as opposed to Guyherne, as opposed to turning right to go through into the town? Was that available? Was that traffic available with the roundabout previously? Because obviously we have the development that's there. So do we know roughly what percentage of traffic turns which way?
Yeah, that would have been conducted as part of the baseline surveys.
You wouldn't have that figure to hand today?
I don't have it to hand on me at the moment.
I can find it, but I mean, as far as I recall, it was approximately something like 3/4 going towards Peterborough and about a quarter going towards March, as it were, or the 141, because Peterborough is the biggest draw from traffic going from all the residential developments in Whittlesea.
Okay, thank you. And one for officers. On this at the present time. Sorry, I've forgotten what I was going to say now. Oh yeah, regarding conditioning of the 106 money, again, could we have the same condition in place as on the previous application?
Through you, Chairman, given the resolution on the previous application was with recommendation and didn't actually change the wording of the resolution, there's a question mark over whether that's actually sort of gone through, I suppose. Ultimately, if members want to alter the proposal or make a proposal that alters that recommendation, so there's a degree of consultation between officers and members over the allocation of the 106 money, again, that's within the committee's gift to do that when it comes to making a decision.
Thank you. And secondly on that, the other question regarding the boundary of Coates and Whittlesea and the field. Am I right in, when I was on the site survey, there is a parade of houses, which really is probably the end border, where at the bottom, sorry, across the road from the Aldi, there is already a sort of some houses there, and then we get a defined barrier by the roadway into the new development.
Yeah, there's an existing row of houses just to the sort of south of the site, but north of Eastery Road. I think they're well-established properties, but yeah, sort of Drybread Road going north to south will provide a sort of well-defined boundary, defensible boundary, as one might describe it. And it's the fields. The green buffer is the fields to the east of Drybread Road, and also the fields to the south of Eastery Road. I think there's some sort of industrial area south of Eastery Road to the east of Aldi. It's those sort of fields that are the green buffer within the neighbourhood plan.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor.
Through you, Chair, question for highways. I'm not confident in the safety aspect of what has been presented in terms of this road, and so I wondered what surveys were done. I want to ensure that they were actually in person, they weren't desktop surveys, and for how long and which periods of time did you visit that road?
Do you mean regarding the access proposals?
I'm, through you, Chair, I'm talking about in regard to the proposed site, where it enters onto the 605, and also the existing entrances onto the 605 or the exit from the supermarket and the other new estate on the other side of the road, how it all comes together, and what it looks like in terms of how busy it is now, and the proposed site factoring in the 249 houses. I would like to know, did you visit the site? How did you do your surveys? When did you do your surveys? And all the information related to that in terms of how busy it is already and how that 249 more houses might impact that street scene as it is.
Through the chair, yes, I can deal with this. As part of the application and the many changes that are going onto that road due to the development on the other side and this development on the north side, to make sure that all the accesses could be properly implemented safely, we have something called a road safety audit that's done. A road safety audit is done by an independent consultant, or in fact, Cambridgeshire County Council, and it consists of a desktop study primarily, firstly, where they look at the traffic flows, they look at the proposed traffic flows from all the accesses. But then also they do a site visit as part of the audit. It's actually required as part of the terms and conditions of the audit. And then they go out on site and they have a look to see what their thoughts are on how the accesses will interact with each other and the conditions on the road, the speeds, the flows, etc. And then they come up with a series of recommendations. So they might look at a scheme and say, well, actually, you need to move that access, or you need to change that, or you need to reduce the speed limit. Those recommendations then get taken forward. We will then say to the applicant, you need to consider these recommendations. There's a process that follows through where we have a discussion about what recommendations can be dealt with now. So is it a physical movement at the junction, or what can be left to detailed design, which is, do we need to change the speed limit, which will require a TRO? So all that process has been gone through with this junction arrangement, and it's been looked at in detail by a qualified road safety auditor.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, just to confirm, did the surveys take place in the peak times? I imagine that they did. I just want some clarity on that. Thank you.
I believe the surveys are actually 12-hour, but we concentrate on the peak hours anyway, because that's where we know that the worst of the congestion is.
Thank you.
Could we just clarify also, the agent said that they were reducing the speed to 30. However, Councillor Senate Clough said it was already 30. I'm a little confused.
I believe as part of the access proposals that the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit would be extended to cover over the access.
Over both accesses?
I've been informed it's all the way to East Street Village.
Thank you. Any further questions for officers or highways? No? Okay, thank you everyone. I would now like to invite members to debate the item in respect of material planning considerations relevant to the application. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. Councillor Senate Clough.
Thank you, Chair. I do feel that there will be an impact on the green buffer. It will undoubtedly impinge on the layout, the current layout. And while Drybread Road is conveniently being used as a boundary between Whittlesea and East Street, essentially Drybread Road is a country lane, and I feel that the layout will obviously forever be changed by this proposed development, and so I do feel that the green buffer will be compromised. And I still have some concerns about the safety layout of the road. I don't feel fully confident that those have been resolved. So I think my question is really one of how we can make sure that if we go with officer recommendations, that the safety issue, we're confident going ahead that the safety issue is resolved, and how we can mitigate the issues of the green buffer by not by maybe planting more trees and making it greener, because obviously it's going to be forever changed, as I said. So so those are my thoughts around this application.
Thank you. Any further? Councillor Murphy.
Yeah, just to come back what Elizabeth just said, there is change. All over the world is change. Everywhere we're building is change. I used to live next to an open field at one stage, but it's been built on, and now I live in the middle of a town. It's just ecological fact that it's going to happen. And I think we've got to put our mindset into thinking, well, this will happen, and it'll happen after we've gone, and we can't stop it. And why should we stop it? Because we need housing. Every time you put a television on, we need housing for this, we need housing for that. And I think these sort of things are all looked at and carefully considered, and I think it should go ahead.
Thank you. Councillor Seniclough.
For you, Chair, if I can just come back to Councillor Murphy's point, I think we run into a philosophical discussion about change if we're not careful. Just because change happens doesn't necessarily make it right. But as I say, we are not going to get into a philosophical discussion about change. My concerns were about the fundamentals and how they impact material considerations with regard to this application, about the safety and about the green buffer zone. I don't want to get into philosophical discussions.
I think safety has to be taken into consideration here. However, we have an application that is compliant. We have highways who are the experts here, a bit like when we have the drainage people here. So we have to go with what they say. They are the experts. Unfortunately, we aren't. What they are suggesting is what they are suggesting. It is a compliant application after all said and done. One thing I would like to say though is, and I did this on the last one, are we all happy that we condition the 106 money, that the chair and vice chair deal with that via the head of planning? Could we all have an agreement on that so we can condition that? Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Seniclough.
Councillor Marks, I'd just like to come in with the greatest respect. We represent residents. You said we have to go with what they say. This is our opportunity to act on behalf of residents in Fenland to make sure that all the safety procedures are in place. I would rather do that than just sit back quietly and say, well, highways know what they're doing. Well, let's make sure that all safety considerations have been put in place, rather than just say, give them, carte blanche to go ahead and do whatever they like. I'm here representing residents, and I'd like to make sure the road layout is as safe as possible.
Thank you. And I totally accept what you're saying. However, I'm no expert in road safety, and I don't believe any of us as councillors are. However, that's why we have highways, and that's why we have building control and everything else. So I have to be led by those because I know no better. I can't question that. Any further debate? Okay, thank you. Members, does any officers have any points to raise clarification?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's just on the point by Councillor Seniclough about the eastern boundary. Obviously, that plan there is shown is purely indicative, but I've sort of mentioned in the report 10.28. saying that obviously there are views into the site from the east, and that is the sort of the juxtaposition between the development and the countryside. So basically I've said that, you know, some of the open space and landscaping could be increased along that eastern edge, and that's putting down a marker for what we'd expect in the reserve matters, so that there is greater landscaping than is shown in that indicative plan coming through with the reserve matters. So it does look on that plan that the housing comes straight on, you know, onto off Drybread Road into housing, but I think through the reserve matters and jiggling around of the open space, that particular boundary, as well as the northern ones, because they're the positions where you've got the views coming into the site, can be the focus of you know, open space and landscaping.
Thank you. Anything further? No? Okay, thank you. Okay, so do I have a proposer to go with officer's recommendation to grant planning permission? Councillor Murphy.
Sorry, through you, Chairman, is that with the issue of the section 106
Yes.
being in conjunction with the Chair and Vice Chair?
Sorry, yes. Okay. Councillor. Do I have a seconder to go with this recommendation? Councillor Mafferdon. Thank you. We will now go to the vote. If you support the proposal to go with officer's recommendation, please raise your hand.
4 votes, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. If you're against the proposal to go with officer's recommendation, please raise your hand.
1 vote, Chairman.
Thank you. To declare to the committee the decision which is approved. Thank you. I will now hand over to David Rowan, Development Manager, to present application FYR 24-0276/F, agenda item number 7.
Chairman, just got some people.
Thank you, Chairman. So item 7 is a full planning application for the erection of 7 dwellings, formation of a new access involving the demolition of the existing dwelling and outbuildings at Goldtree Farm High Road in Guyerne. Just initially draw members' attention to the update report that's been circulated in respect to this item. So the application site is shown in red on the location plan and the aerial photo. It sits within a line of properties fronting High Road with the riverbank on the opposite side of the road, and agricultural fields sit to the rear of the site. The front part of the site, broadly speaking, is within flood zone 1, while the back part of the site is in flood zone 3. There's an existing dwelling within the site with some outbuildings, I think, which have perhaps been recently cleared. And the remainder of the sites has sort of been used for general sort of domestic purposes historically. So as indicated, the application is full in its nature and proposes 4 detached dwellings along the frontage of the site, and these are shown in the street scene drawing in the upper image, and then 3 detached dwellings which are numbered plots 5 to 7 running sort of right to left, and then also garages to the rear of most parts of the site. Access is via an access road, which is sort of indicated in the kind of creamy coloured centre block on the image. It's probably not reproduced particularly brilliantly, but I think you could probably make out where it is. So in terms of the flood zones, plot 6 and 7 are entirely within flood zone 3, while plot 5 is significantly within flood zone 3. And then plots 1 to 4 on the frontage are in flood zone 1. We'll just try and draw members' attention to the car parking area in front of those rear plots. Firstly, in terms of the amount of activity which would be taking place to the front of these dwellings, so the immediate front of these dwellings, given there's no real separation between the road and the front of the properties, but also to draw members' attention to the lack of manoeuvring space at the back of those bays, and also the constrained nature of the size of the bays themselves. And just in terms of those rearmost plots, also just draw members' attention to the rear gardens of those and the sort of slightly slanted nature, shall we say, leading to direct overlooking from the other dwellings. So details of the frontage plots are shown here, and then with details of the rear plots shown here. And then we've also got details of the garages as shown here, and as detailed within the officer report, these are considered to fall below the standards set in the local plan, and therefore aren't considered to be available as car parking spaces. So we've got various images of the site it is at present. So photograph 1 shows the existing dwelling to be demolished. Photograph 2 again shows part of this, and also the land to the east of this, which is part of the application site. Photograph 3 is a view of the adjacent development sort of to the west of the site, at the other side of the existing property. Photograph 4 is land to the rear of the existing dwelling. Photograph 5, again land to the rear to be developed. And then photograph 6 is the adjacent development to the east, so the top side of the site. So to conclude, whilst the principle of some form of development on the frontage of the site is deemed to be acceptable, the introduction of backland development with the rearmost plots is not. This conflicts with the prevailing pattern of development in the vicinity of the site, and also with policy LP3, which sets out that only infilling should normally be considered acceptable within Guyerne. The layout of the 3 properties at the rear of the site is considered to result in a cramped, overdeveloped built form, which would afford poor levels of amenity to future residents, and which would result in largely unusable car parking spaces, exacerbating the already under delivery of parking spaces for the quantum of development proposed. As the site falls within flood zone 3 and proposes a form of development above that deemed appropriate in the settlement hierarchy, the area of search for the sequential test is considered to be wider than just the settlement. As such, the submitted sequential test is deemed to be inadequate. If the sequential test were to be accepted, however, the application would need to pass the exception test, and no measures have been identified within the submission to address this, remembering as well that this is actually a full application. Consequently, the application is considered to be contrary to local and national policies as set out within the report, and the officer recommendation is therefore to refuse the application accordingly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David. We have one speaker on this application. I would like to invite Shana Jackson, the agent, to make her presentation to the committee. You have 5 minutes when seated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak in support of this application. As you've just heard, the proposal is for 7 dwellings on land at High Road in Guyerne. Firstly, I'd like to highlight to you the benefits of the scheme. As I'm sure you're aware, over the years, Guyerne has evolved to become what could be considered as a commuter settlement. Particularly along Gull Road, there are very big £500,000 houses which are occupied by London commuters. Sadly, this has resulted in local people being bought out of the village with limited opportunities for lower cost family homes. This scheme presents an excellent opportunity to provide lower cost family homes within the heart of the village, which can be delivered straight away. The scheme has been recommended for refusal for various reasons, which include the principle, form and character, residential amenity, and highways and flood risk issues. We've read and note the proposed reasons for refusal and would respond as follows. With regards to the principle and form and character, paragraphs 10.3 and 10.8 of the committee report state that the 4 plots to the front are acceptable in principle, and officers also acknowledge that there is development in depth elsewhere within the village. The issue therefore lies with the 3 in-depth dwellings. I would highlight to you that there are many examples of development in depth within the area. This can be seen at Neen Close, Glebe Gardens, Spencer Drove and Hillcrest Drive. The proposal will extend no further into the countryside than these developments and will extend no further than the curtilage of other dwellings within the vicinity of the site. Therefore, despite the proposal not strictly comprising infill development, there will be no character harm, only benefits to be gained by providing lower cost housing within a sustainable location. The comments about residential amenity are noted. However, the views from the rear bedroom windows towards garden areas would be obscured by the single-storey rear projections on the dwellings. This is no different to any other estate situation anywhere else within the district. In addition, the scheme isn't cluttered. There are patios around the dwellings which perhaps give a deceptively cluttered impression of more buildings. It's actually quite spacious, and there's opportunity to provide landscaping to soften the appearance of the buildings and parking areas, and we'd be happy to accept a condition to this effect. There's an objection on parking due to the garage spaces falling slightly smaller than the prescribed standards. However, the local plan also states that lesser parking provision may be accepted in central locations with good transport links. Given that this site is within the built-up settlement of Guy Hearn, it is in a sustainable location where future residents can walk or cycle to amenities, as well as catch public transport to go further afield. Therefore, this could be an instance where lesser parking provision is acceptable. In any case, there are no objections from the local highway authority in this regard, and as such they have no concerns about the potential for parking on the public highway as a result of the perceived shortfall of parking spaces. We have submitted a sequential test which demonstrates that there are no alternative sites available in Guy Hearn which could accommodate the proposal. However, these results have been dismissed because of the in-depth nature of the development, which I think is actually really unfair. The submitted documents prove that the sequential test is passed and therefore the exception test applies. With regard to the exception test, I would submit that the proposal meets both of the criteria because the flood risk assessment demonstrates that the scheme is technically acceptable and because the development comprises the delivery of housing within a sustainable location which can be provided in the very short term. This is a distinct community benefit. I hope you're able to see the benefits of the scheme and that you're able to grant planning permission accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like to invite members to put questions to Mrs Jackson. If you would like to do so, to ask a question, please can you raise your hand? Councillor Senniclough.
Hello, Mrs Jackson. Thank you for your really detailed presentation. You've answered a lot of questions. However, I've just got two that I'd like to just push you on a bit further. So you mentioned the parking, and did I hear rightly that you mentioned on-street parking? Is that correct?
So what we've done is the development would generate the need for 14 parking spaces. 4 of those are proposed in garaging, but because the garages fall slightly lower than the standards in the local plan, they can't be counted. So you know, it could be perceived that the shortfall would go on street, but highways haven't commented on that and they have no concerns in that regard. So my personal opinion is that there is no fear of on-street parking.
Through you, Chair, I'd just like to come back on the huge number of HGVs that pass down that road to the anaerobic digester plant. I've lived on that road, I know that road, and I don't think on-street parking would be ideal. So that's my first point. My second point was you said that residents could walk or cycle to amenities. What amenities could they walk or cycle to from Guy Hearn?
So in Guy Hearn, there are the playing fields, there is the local school, there's a pub with a restaurant in it, I believe, and there are bus stops. And play today.
When you said amenities, I was thinking shops and such larger amenities, but thank you for your clarity.
Councillor Afton.
Hi, Ms Jackson. Yeah, I know this road very well. In fact, I was there yesterday and I drove past it this morning coming here. The property in question, the one to be taken down, it is an eyesore. It has got a lot of Halloween decorations on it at the moment. And also there's a telescopic forklift in the rear garden of the property. My question relates to the number of units. Will the developer consider reducing the number of units? That's the first question. And also, the second question is LP3, that is, doesn't constitute and infill. What's your response to that? Thank you.
Okay, so policy LP3 is a settlement hierarchy, and it directs development, categorises Guy Herne as a small village where infill only is appropriate. The spirit of the policy is to ensure that there is no encroachment into the open countryside, because it's pushing new development into sustainable areas. Now, what I would say is that whilst these houses wouldn't necessarily meet, the ones to the rear anyway, wouldn't necessarily meet the definition of infill, they're still complying with the spirit of the policy because they're not encroaching any further into the countryside than other development in the area. Plus, they're still all within that curtilage of the existing dwelling. So while you've got a residential use on that site which is bound by existing boundaries, we're not encroaching any further into that, so it's still kind of protecting that residential use, if that makes sense, not going any further.
Reduction number of units, is that something the developer will consider, the client to consider?
So I'm sure if members felt that 7 dwellings were too much, we could obviously go back and have a look at that. I guess it would just be a procedural thing for the council, because the scheme in front of you is for 7, and that's what I'm asking you to look at. Like I said, if you felt that less than 7 would be more appropriate and it was acceptable to go away and change that, we'd be happy to do that. But I am conscious that's a different application.
Councillor Murphy.
Yes, I was very interested in this part of 5.8 here with the refuse vehicles and that. I don't know whether you realise that 7 properties is 14 large 240 bin size bins to be in there, and also in food waste when it comes into in a year's time, that's another 7 more food caddies there. A 26-ton lorry takes a lot of turning, and when it goes into a place like that, it has to turn round. It can't come out and reverse outwards. It has to turn around, and you need a lot of space for a 26-ton lorry to turn around, I tell you. And I don't know whether you've taken that sort of thing into consideration at all.
What I would say is there's tracking on the drawings which show turning for vehicles. I understand what you're saying about the size of the refuse trucks. We would be happy to accept a condition for refuse strategy. So whether it be a private collection or a private arrangement, we would be happy to accept that, if that helps in any way.
Yeah, I do think it needs to come back again though here to see whether it can be possibly done. I don't think you realise quite how much room is needed.
Thank you. I'll ask a couple of questions. Firstly, I am really concerned regarding the size of the plot compared to what you're trying to put in there. And then I'm hearing we're reducing the garage size. So we've got a reduction on garage size now. Owning a property where you can't even get the car doors open and these are going to be younger families there that need to get 4 doors open to get children in and out. How much more are you reducing it? Because all that's going to happen is if they can't get the cars in the garage, they're going to park roadside, and we're then going to have a highways issue before we start anything else. So how much are you reducing the garages by? Is my first question.
Okay, so the local plan requires garage spaces to be 3 by 7 to be counted as a space. The drawings that we've shown show the garage spaces to be 5.9 by 2.8, so it's 1.2 metres shorter and 20 centimetres narrower than the local plan asks for. The only issue that I can see with the garage spaces is where we've got 4 bedrooms proposed, because a 4-bedroom property would generate the need for an extra parking space. So those units, I believe, would still have 2 parking spaces. It's the 3rd space which is the issue, which is the one that's in the garage. So if you're talking about a family home with children, Is it likely that the children will have a car? Maybe, maybe not. But there's still 2 parking spaces for a couple as normal. So it's, for me, it's that third space, and it's whether that third space is essential.
Thank you. I still maintain what I'm saying, which is I think you're trying to get so much onto a plot. I think it almost becomes greed in what you're trying to do. And I have a concern regarding that. You also state regarding there are lots of £500,000 houses in the village which locals can't buy. Is the developer going to put on some sort of covenant that these are only for local families?
That's not the intention, but I think the nature of the buildings, which are smaller, family homes, the market would dictate that it would be, you know, families who could only afford that kind of dwelling. So whilst it's not our intention to do that, I think just the nature of the development would sort of facilitate that anyway.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you very much. I would now like to invite members to put questions to officers or officer. Okay, no questions for David. So, thank you everyone. I would now like to invite members to debate the item in respect of the material planning considerations relevant to the application. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. Councillor Zenit-Clough.
Thank you, Chair. I think we're privileged today to have an expert on bin lorries with us. He raises a point that perhaps I would not have considered, that goes on to a subsequent point about the size, the number of proposed houses on this site. I do feel that 7 is too many for this site. I don't necessarily have any issues with the site itself, but I just feel that the number of properties is too many, maybe 1 too many, 2 too many for the site.
Thank you. Councillor Mafferton.
Thanks, Chair. I just have to agree with that because that's why I raised the issue to see if the agents could speak to the developer if they would consider reducing the number of units on the site. It is a prominent site. I mean, there are no highway issues. It's clear and it's a straight road, not far from the Oliver Twist pub, I think it is. That's the closest public amenity to it. And also it's far from the bend as well, leading to the A47. I'm in agreement that we need to do something with that site. The house on it right now doesn't look very good. It looks like it's not lived in. The site looks more like, you know, just a gravel pit. There's cones everywhere. There's the tractor, the telescopic tractor, but it doesn't look very, very good. I think it needs developing, but I think 7 might be a bit too many units on the site. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Yeah, I have to agree with everything that's been said. It is when you go through there, it can be seen to be not, you know. But yeah, I agree. I think it to be smaller amount of houses.
I have to say, I agree as well. I think officers have got this one right. I think on this occasion, there's too much being pushed into a too small a space. So, anybody got any further comments? Okay, thank you. Members, does any officer have any points of clarification? Thank you. The committee decision is to refuse this application. Okay. Do we need a break at this point, or are we happy to crack on? Do you want a break? Shall we take a 5-minute break? Okay, so I will now hand you over to David Rowan to present application FYR 240303/F, agenda item number 8. David.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is a full application to erect 2 dwellings, including the formation of an access at Woodland, south of St Leonard's Churchyard in Gorefield Road, Leverington. So the application site is shown in red on the location plan and aerial photo. It sits in the centre of Leverington to the south of the cemetery within, as you can see, a fairly heavily treed area. So this plan shows the site in the context of the conservation area, which is the sort of the pink area, and also nearby listed buildings, which are shown in the sort of orangey brown colour. So to the north of the site is the Grade 1 listed church. Across to the eastern side of the conservation area is Leverington Hall, and then within the cemetery is the listed war memorial. And you can also see with the sort of numerous numbers that are shown within that area, they represent tree preservation orders. So as you can see, the heavily treed area that I referred to previously is largely protected, both by virtue of individual tree preservation orders, but also by virtue of being within the conservation area as well. So as I say, this is a full application. So the site plan here is showing how the site would be laid out. So access is proposed to be taken from Gorefield Road, running down the side of the cemetery, and then sort of coming around the back of the cemetery to where the 2 dwellings would be located. As you can see, these are set at a slight angle to each other, then with car parking sort of manoeuvring proposed to the front of those. Then there are a number of retained trees shown within the rear garden areas of those properties. The access track would have a fence down the side separating it from the open space known as the glebe, and there would also be some gates set down that access as well, and also a bin collection point is shown sort of at the mouth of the access track. So details of the 2 dwellings are shown here. So floor plans and elevations. And then moving on to photographs of the site. So photograph 1 shows the location of where the access would run from Gorefield Road, with the glebe to the left and the cemetery to the right. Photograph 2 is a view of the cemetery located sort of to the rear. So the view of the cemetery, the actual application site is sort of located through those trees to the rear of the cemetery. Photograph 3 is a view from the access point to the west along Gorefield Road. Photograph 4 is a view from the access point east along Gorefield Road, and then photograph 5 is a photo of the sort of the site itself and its current nature. Moving on to 3 photos just showing the more general character of the conservation area. So photograph 1 is a view from Church End facing south towards the church and the glebe. So again, the site sits behind the trees on the right hand side. Photograph 2 is a view from Gorefield Road facing southeast with the cemetery and the memorial to the right side. And then photograph 3 is a view from Church End Junction facing south towards the glebe, with the red line depicting pretty much where the access would be going, running down towards the location of the site, sort of evidenced by that sort of red arrow imposed. I think what's clear from excuse me. Thank you, sorry about that. So what's generally clear from these photographs is the openness, the verdant character, and the sort of important spaces and buildings within the locality. So to move on to the summary, it's considered that the site is located within a sensitive historic part of the settlement, where the introduction of a new access road and dwellings would detrimentally impact upon that prevailing character. Additionally, the submitted heritage assessment is considered inadequate in describing the significance of the heritage assets to be affected by the development, and also in terms of justifying the harm which would be caused to those. And then there is also concern that the trees to be retained to the rear of the dwellings, especially to plot 1, would result in restricted light and overshadowing to the rear of those dwellings and their sort of amenity space, and therefore affording a poor level of amenity for future occupiers. So the recommendation is therefore to refuse the application as set out within the agenda. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, David. We have one set of speakers on this application. I would like to invite Kevin Salter, the applicant, and Chris Walford, the agent, to make their presentation to the committee. Gentlemen, you have 5 minutes when seated.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name's Kevin Salter. I represent the company that owns the land. We acquired, to put it in the context, if you see the yellow land adjacent to the red land, we acquired the whole of the land in 1998. The site was a huge problem site. It was overgrown, it was vandalised, it had antisocial behaviour in it, and we tried to work very closely with all the authorities, the parish council at the time, the local councillors, local residents. We consulted with people. We worked very closely with Malcolm Ham, who was the then tree officer, who agreed that we couldn't do anything until we started to work closely with him. The site was derelict after it was burnt. The former rectory, which was on the yellow site, was burnt down in the mid-1990s. Prior to that, the previous owner had got planning consents, including this land, as part of one of the consents for a high-density residential development in there and the conversion of the former chapter house. Moving on from that, that company went into liquidation. We bought it off the Anglo-Irish Bank and tried to pursue a sensible planning application, but one which worked to enhance the conservation area. Had the former development gone ahead, it would have been severely detrimental to the conservation area. So working closely with all these different authorities, we came up with a scheme for a low density 5-unit scheme, which we developed called Chapter Gardens. I don't know if Ms. Gay, you're probably familiar with it. Other members, if you've been through Levington and you've seen it, in our opinion, it's a prime example of how to turn a problem site, which was, if we hadn't have had it, somebody would have gone ahead and pushed for another scheme for 10 residential units in there and the conversion of Chapter House, and it would have been an awful, awful mess. We're very proud of what we did there. We could only, at the time, policy was you could only get 5 dwellings off a shared driveway. So that's why we did that scheme there, and it works very well. We kept the other land back. Why we kept it back, I don't know. We couldn't actually do anything with it. We had various people saying, oh, wouldn't it be good for this, wouldn't it be good for that? But unfortunately, over the last 20 years, it's become a nightmare of a site. It's badly vandalised. The trees in there, most of them are grade C trees. We've worked very closely with Graham Causey, the tree officer. Anything we've done in there, work that we've done in there, we've done strictly in accordance with applications that we've made or advice that we've been given by Graham. Actually, in his recommendations to our planning application, a previous planning application where we sought to remove some of the trees, he supported the removal of all those trees, and you'll see that on the planning file. So although there are TPOs on some of those trees, most of those trees have been supported by Graham to committee to actually have them removed. And one of the things we want to do, are you familiar with paragraph 72, subsection 2 of the National Planning Policy Framework, which encourages local authorities to consider where conservation areas can be enhanced. Now, that's all we're seeking to do here. This isn't primarily about getting 2 houses and making money out of building 2 houses. It's to bring that site to a remediated site so that we have a remediation plan as part of the planning application, which would deal with all the problem sites within the trees, replanting of the boundaries with native hedgerows and species. At that point, I'll hand over to Chris.
Thank you, members. Yeah, just to reiterate what Kevin was saying there. So of all the trees on site that are to be removed for the development, they either have pre-existing consent for removal, or they are, I think that leaves 2 that haven't, and those 2 have been confirmed in Graham Cause's report to be affected by ash dieback. They're in poor condition. So his recommendation for approval of the application on terms of trees was very much on the basis that the loss of the trees was not detriment to the development. I myself have lived in Leverington, born there, lived there 24 years, and my house looked onto the glebe. I can vouch for the comings and goings on the site. I think it's used as a bit of a run through from the sports field, from the glebe. There's always been antisocial behaviour, fires, police called. I remember parents getting involved with things over there, and it has been a problem. And even on our site visit, there was a trolley in the ditch in there. There's, and I think the best way, like a listed building, if you put someone in a listed building, it's the best way to maintain it, look after it, and the same can be applied to this site. If you give it a couple of families that can live there, they will love it. They will maintain the trees. They will look after the area, and I can only see that being an enhancement over and above what it is now and where it's heading. So I think, and also to stress that it's so well screened. We're not changing any of the perimeter. The trees there are staying. I've got another slide coming up here with an arrow on it, and you can there's a for sale sign on the site. It was for sale, and it's not visible. You can't see the site. Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like to invite members to put questions to Mr. Salter and Mr. Walford. If you would like to, Mr. Walford, if you would like to ask a question, please can you raise your hand? Councillor Afton.
Hello, Mr. Salter. Thank you for your presentation. I know this place very well, live in West Beach. I use this route going to Parsons Road, Goldfield and places like that, so I know the site very well. And I also know that the church itself is, it's been under, if I can use the word attack, by vandals. Yes, it's a great one listed building, and it's sad what people are doing to it. So my question is, I want to just first of all commend you on what you did on the previous site, and it's not an easy task to take on a site like that.
No, it's not.
And look after it the way you obviously have done. But my question is, why 2 units? Why not just one? Because looking at the other developments on that side, they're quite spacious. They have good grounds around them. Why 2 on this one?
I think from where I'm concerned, there is a development cost. It's going to cost an enormous amount of money to remediate that site. By the time we've got the infrastructure, the road, by the way, is contrary to what the Parish Council says, it's not Grasscrete Road. It's actually a system called Grand Tracks. Grand Tracks is a permeable surface, basically, so you don't even see the road. From Gorefield Road, you won't even notice the road because it will be, it's a no-dig road. So it's actually built onto the ground. It's probably only got a depth to the top of this table, maybe. But it's reinforced with, and you then fill it full of gravel, or you can grass it, and it takes up to 40 tonnes in weight. So by the time you've put that roadway in and the infrastructure in, there's a significant cost to service the land. So it wouldn't really be viable just to build one house in there. That's the bottom line, really. But as I say, this isn't about this primarily, and that's what I'm trying to explain to people to get focused, that this is about remediating a problem site, which is, it gets worse as the day goes by. For the last 20 years, I've had to deal with this. It's cost an enormous amount of money. It's caused an enormous amount of problems. We've had Albanians living in there. We've had bonfires in there. We've had all sorts of problems, and it's a continual problem. So it's a similar, as I said, when we first set out with Chapter Garden site, we all worked together to find a solution. We found that solution. That solution has proved over a period of time just how it can be done. And all we're asking here is for that to be considered as well.
Thank you. Like I said earlier, I totally sympathise with you, and I understand what you're trying to do there. I have witnessed, I have been called out to some of the vandalism on the church as well. So I know what you're saying. Thank you.
I lived in Leamington for many years in Knights Close, and I was the clock winder at the church for many years. And even in those days, we were having very bad problems with vandalism at the church, with windows being smashed continually. So it's not a new problem, unfortunately.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Clark.
Yeah, obviously, as I said, this is my ward, and I do know there has been antisocial behaviour in that area. My question I would like to ask is, obviously the glebe, Now, that is owned by the church, isn't it?
Is that by the Diocesan Board of Ely?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, access then,
Yes.
have they, because I've looked through the report,
Yep.
and I can't see any consultation from the Diocese of Ely or the church parishional council.
Yeah, I can answer
So,
that.
can you sort of...
Yeah, by all means. We first approached the Diocesan Board many years ago, probably even as long as 20 years ago, to ask if there would be any potential to get an access across the Glebe Field. And the answer was no. That was no. And they kept that story going for a number of years. In 2016, the very same man said yes. So we have correspondence, and we deal with a guy called David Buttery, who is the agent for Jolliffe, who are the agents of the Diocesan Board. So through them, we have an agreement with Jolliffe and the Diocesan Board that if we get planning consent, they will grant an access across that land. So that's where we are. So they said, what is the point in granting you an access, getting you to pay thousands of pounds in legal fees to grant an access when you don't even know if you can get planning consent on the land? So the way they want to deal with it is, if you can get permission on your land, we will grant you an access. Now, the parish council, parishional church council, right? So they have a rent on that land. They don't have a right of tenure on that land, right? And we've cleared that. Otherwise, we wouldn't have even wasted our time doing this. If we thought what was the point of doing all this and spending all this time and all this money making the planning applications? It's not, if you look at all the reports and the reappraisals we've had to do, we've spent an awful lot of money getting to this point. We wouldn't have bothered if we thought we can't get an access across the land. So that it was all in hand.
It's just that I've had issues with that piece of land, because obviously the school was pretty close, and the parking outside schools is horrendous. Now, we did suggest to the diocese that we could turn that into car park, and no, nothing. So I am questioning, why would they give you access? I'm not saying it's not, but why would they give you access?
Well, it's quite easy, really. I have to pay for it. And quite a considerable amount of money. There is a case in law going back to 1962, or is it 64, called Stokes v Cambridge. And that is, you probably know all about Stokes v Cambridge, but it's basically where you have a ransom strip, or you've got no access to your land, and if somebody grants you an access to their land, you have to pay them the 50% uplift in value between what you say is worth now, which is nothing, and what it would be worth with planning consent. And then you work out what the deductible costs are, and basically they end up with 50% of the net value as a contribution for allowing an access across the land. So the answer is, because they're going to be paying for it. Quite a lot of money.
As I said, I do know the antisocial behaviour in that area has been... We've actually had special meetings at the village hall with the police, because it's been quite bad, and vandalism at the church, empty other properties in the area where they've set fire. And I do believe, like you said, there has been several fires on that piece of land in the past.
Yeah, one of the neighbours who has been keeping a watch on the site for me ever since he's lived there has shown me, in fact I haven't got him on the telephone here, but if I had I'll show you him now, but he's actually filmed from over his fence when the Albanians were living in there, and the bonfires and everything. It was horrendous. So we've got a lot of evidence of that, antisocial behaviour ourselves. And okay.
Sorry, go ahead again.
As I say, my concern is just the piece of land and the access with the glebe, as long as that is being, Okay, thank you.
Councillor Sutcliffe.
Thank you, Chair. I've read the reports in-depthly, and I have concerns about some of the comments that were made from Leverington Parish Council about the cemetery, and whether it's grasscrete or whatever it is you're digging out. Can you just not turn that on until I finish, because it affects the recording. They have said that there'll be some damage, and I understand that there's some Commonwealth War graves in there. Well, whatever graves are in there, we don't want a cemetery being disturbed unnecessarily. So my concerns are about what, if any, disruption there'll be to the cemetery from your development.
Right, thank you for that. There's two things there I'd like to raise. Number one, it's a no-dig road. So basically, it's a minimal scrape of the surface that you take. And Chris has got the specification here for it. And then, as I say, the depth of the road is literally no more than the width of this table. So it's actually, as I said before, you won't see it. That's the first thing. In terms of how far is it from any grave, there is an established hedgerow there between there and the graveyard. In terms of distance, it's probably 15 feet away from the nearest.
We're 2 metres off there.
Yeah, 2 metres off there.
Yeah.
So it's a good 12 to 15 feet away. In comparison, if you go across the road and have a look at what the parish council have done for their new graveyard, which is going to cover all the allotment areas eventually, it's a huge, I couldn't believe how big it was, this plan application that they got approved some years ago. They've put a solid, hard road, not a grasscrete road, not even a grasscrete road, certainly not a Grand Tracks one. They've put a solid, hard road into the new graveyard area behind the church, which is going to hundreds of graveyards in there. They're literally, I've measured it, it's 2 foot away from the headstones of people's graves. 2 foot away from the headstones. So it's we're going to be nowhere near anybody's grave. And as I say, it's minimal disruption because there's really nothing to take away. If you look at Chapter Gardens, we did a no-dig road in there. That is actually a no-dig road, although it is actually brick pavia, because in those days, 20 years ago, unfortunately, Grand Tracks wasn't about. Had Grand Tracks been about then, we would have used it then. But it's worked very well there. But as I say, in terms of distance from graves, we're a good long distance away, much further away than the parish council are on the other side of the road, with no protection at all, I may add, to the gravestones themselves, because I saw a car down there the other day doing a 3-point turn down there. It got gone down there, and how he didn't back into the gravestones, I don't know. So, but as I say, between our Grand Track Road and the existing cemetery, the old cemetery rather, 12, 15 feet, and you've got a hedgerow. So that's the answer to that.
Thank you. So the hedgerow will remain. Is that correct? Thank you.
Thank you. Couple of questions. Firstly, how do you actually get into the site now then? Because you're speaking about upkeep, but you don't actually sort of like say if you can't get into that. I just wonder how you're getting into the site at the present time to upkeep it.
We have a long-standing agreement with Jolliffe, the agent for the diocesan board, to allow us access through. There's an existing gateway opposite the school, which is open sometimes. Sometimes you go down there and you'll see cars parked all over the place, particularly in the summer months. The school uses it quite a lot. But that's where we go in when we do need to go in. But when we do go in, we don't go in with big machinery or anything like that. In the past, we've done it with very small works, chainsaws and things like that, and removed it by hand.
Okay, coming on to one of the questions one of my colleagues asked regarding 2 homes instead of 1. Shading from the trees seems to, those trees are fairly substantial trees. It's quite a tight area, and I'm concerned, reference the shading for the trees. Would it not be better for 1 home in the middle as opposed to the 2 that you have there? And also regarding access and turning circles and points at by the homes themselves.
I think Chris is better to explain about the access and turning and whatever, but as I said earlier on, economically it wouldn't be viable just to get permission and put 1 house in there. At the end of the day, construction costs for building a house have gone through the roof, as you know. There's very little profit in a 4-bedroom house after all the costs have been taken into account, so it would not be really viable just to do 1 dwelling. As far as the trees go, yes, it looks on plan, but we already have consent from Fenland and with Graham Causey to crown a number of those trees, and in further investigation, there will be probably more tree removal in there. Certainly the ones, as Chris said earlier on, we have got, although we haven't taken them down yet, we're perfectly enabled if we wanted to, go and take them down tomorrow, but we've got permission to remove a number of the trees in there. But as I said, with the new remediation plan we will be providing, we wouldn't be providing trees that grow as big as these do. It'd just be the hedgerows, particularly along the south, where the sports pavilion is, where the sports ground is. One point I would like to add though is, excuse me, I think we've all got a bit of a cough today. And one thing I would like to add is that the Conservation Officer in his report refers to an established protected hedgerow on the eastern boundary of the site. There's not one there, never has been.
But we're proposing one.
But we are proposing one. And so it's a little bit inaccurate, a little bit misleading. People think, oh, there's a protected hedgerow there. There's not one there.
Okay, can I come back on that? As a conservation area,
Yeah.
I'm really concerned to hear we're going to crown some trees and then we may take some other trees down. This is a conservation area where street view, when you see the church and the graveyard, I understand to you it's a piece of wasteland. However, it's the character of the village, and we're about to, or we may be about to give two houses into there, which I'm not convinced personally, and having read the officer's report, that it will match in with the conservation area.
Yeah, so going on to start on the point from before about the loss of, or the light in the gardens. Now, if you refer to Chapter Gardens, the existing, it's clear when you're there, it's a very successful development that's worked with the trees. It's definitely worked with the character of the area.
But
and I think
sorry, just to come back on that, there's a lot more space around those other properties to what there is that you're proposing now.
Still a lot of trees though.
There is.
I think, clearly if you're going to buy a plot here, when you arrive, you're going to see there's a lot of trees there, and even the site we're talking about now, when you're there on the right day with the light coming through, it's a beautiful site. It just needs a bit of loving care, and it would make a nice setting. But yes, I think you wouldn't, if you're going to be aware that there's going to be some light loss from trees, but you would like the trees. So you're not going to buy that and expect it to be a completely south-facing, sunny garden. And just like the people on Chapter Gardens, they were well aware when they moved in that there are trees on site, and they may or will cause some shadowing. But I don't think that's detriment to the development. I think it can still prove an enhanced site. It can be a lovely place to live, and it is south-facing gardens, albeit with some trees on site. And I don't see that being its downfall. I think it's certainly not going to be a shock to anyone that arrives that there are trees there and there will be some shadowing. And in terms of turning, we've got the tracking on there for. It was mainly requested for emergency vehicle turning. The plan wouldn't be to bring refuse lorries on site because we've got a roadside collection. The plan, we've got space there for 4 spaces per house, ample space for those, and the turning clear of that area for emergency vehicles. And the weighting of the road is adequate for said vehicles as well. And that road system is designed mainly for route protection. That's what the thing we're trying to reassure everyone was that there won't be any damage to trees, even if someone is driving on it, because it essentially dissipates any weight as well.
To come back on that point, that's great, but as the gentleman said previously, we might have to deal with further trees. So I have that concern.
The remediation plan, which forms part of the plan application, sets out what the proposal is for the existing trees that have permission to be removed, those that have permission to be crowned, and what we intend to do with the boundaries. It's the boundaries, really, which are a real mess and causing a lot of light not to get into the site. Overgrown scrub, self-sown this, self-sown that. So it's not major the large tree removals, it's more undergrowth.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any further questions? Nope. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. I would now like to invite members to put questions to officers. Councillor Murphy.
Yeah, I don't know myself, but is there, when there's a TPO and they've got consent to take it down, is there a time limit on it?
Through you, Chairman, yes, I believe there is.
Do we know what the time limit is?
I think it's 2 years.
So would we be over that 2 years or under that 2 years with this one?
Through you, Chairman, certainly looking at the planning history that's indicated here, we've got works to trees which were deemed as exempt in 2020, 2022, 2022 and 2022. So yes, the 2 years would look as though they've sort of been exceeded.
So in other words, they can't take them down now until they apply again.
That would appear to be the case, yeah.
Further questions to officers? Nope.
I suppose the other point, just to come back on as well, in terms of trees, or just to elaborate upon, is that certainly where you've got works to protected trees that are protected by virtue of a tree preservation order, if they're deemed as sort of effectively exempt work, so you can sort of do them without formal consent being granted because of the urgency of the situation, there's a requirement in the tree regulations that the trees are replaced sort of on a like-for-like basis. And again, also as part of any approval that we've actually granted for works to TPOs, usually that's subject to a condition that replacement trees are to be provided as well. So it's not normally the case that works to remove trees are just kind of granted and that's the end of the tree on the site. There is usually something in there that requires replacement trees to be planted.
Yeah, but it's just still, the part what I'm saying is that if it's out of date, does it revert back to a TPO tree?
Well, it remains a TPO tree until such time as it's been taken down. If the works to that tree haven't been done within the requisite period, then there is no consent in place to do those works. But I think as well, it's important for members to, particularly in the comments, in terms of the context of the comments made by Mr. Salter, that even if there is approval in place, or there was approval in place for trees to be removed, there would be an expectation and a mechanism to actually have replacement trees planted. So it's not the case that the council's just accepted trees being cleared from the site. There would be an expectation that trees would go back if the removal was deemed necessary.
Can I just come back on that? So there could be a possibility that the TPOs for the 2 years is now up, so we're reverting back to a TPO. So do we then need to have another report from a tree officer before we grant planning?
In terms of dealing with the current application, then I don't think that's necessarily material to the determination of this current application. The issues that are identified, so the council's tree officer has commented on the application, hasn't necessarily raised objections in terms of the loss of the trees per se. The council's conservation officer has raised concerns in the round about the loss of the trees, the introduction then of built form on the site and the overall impact. I don't think that the issue of the loss of trees necessarily precludes the committee making a decision on this application today, but I think that in terms of the weight that the committee can potentially give to the arguments potentially being put forward by the applicants about the effectively the sort of the permissions that are in place, for want of a better word, for the removal of trees on the site is perhaps diminished by the time issue that Councillor Murphy's picked up on.
Thank you. Any further questions, officers? No? Okay. Thank you, everybody. I'd now like to invite members to debate the item in respect of material planning considerations relevant to the application. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. Who's going first?
I feel that the grounds for refusal are not that substantial with this application. I feel that I went into it thinking that there are some issues with it being a conservation area, the heritage aspect, but I feel now that all those questions have been answered, not just adequately, but in such a way as to convince me that actually this is a good application. And I feel very satisfied with the responses that I've had from the agent, the applicant.
Thank you. Councillor Lafferton.
Thank you, Chair. Because I personally know this site, and I have been contacted by locals and residents about the problems they have on the site, from not just vandalism of the listed church, problem with squatters, with alcohol and drug-related problems, and some other antisocial behavior as well, and the impact that the near derelict site is having on the local community, the on the lifestyles, and how elderly people are afraid to walk around that area because they're just worried about what's going on the site. Yes, I understand the conservation concerns of the site, the TPOs, the listed building, but I think something needs to be done with this site. So I'd like to see what other members think before I make my decision. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Any further comments? Okay, so having been there, had a look, just having a quick flick again at Liverington Parish Council's comments. There is obviously concern within the village. I have concerns over the trees. We've heard already what David's had to say. I've also, I don't know whether it sits well having two properties in that small area or in that area. We've seen next door how the developer has put 5 more in a lot larger area, and I would feel more comfortable with one property as opposed to two. Now, we've heard obviously the financial side of that, but usually somebody who wants to build a property like that will find a way round. It may become a bit more of an expensive property or whatever, but there's usually a way that it can be found. My feeling is, having looked at it, yes, the site does need something doing with it, but I just feel 2 properties are one too many. I'll open it back up. Councillor Clark.
Like you said, the antisocial behaviour in that area is not, good, and there has been issues. Yeah, I agree. I think one and the concern is the trees again, and one property. Yeah.
Councillor Seneca.
Thank you, Chair. When I think about the opportunity to build one property or two in relation to this application, I think that one property may be a substantially bigger, more expensive property, and 2 properties might be slightly cheaper and offer the opportunity for locals to purchase these properties and stay in the area. So those are my thoughts around 1 versus 2 properties.
Personally, I couldn't agree more. However, the other thing I think we need to take into consideration also, it is a conservation area, and the look of 2 properties as opposed to 1, I suppose it's in the eye of the beholder whether you agree or disagree that 2 looks better than 1, whatever. And we've just turned one down at Guyherne today, which were 7 properties in a small space. So we've just denied, you could argue, sort of like 7 families housing because of cutting it back like that. As I say, I still think 1 would be better than 2. Councillor Lafferty.
Thanks, Chair. Talking about 1 or 2, Leverington is an area where people like to live in one of the villages outside Wisby, so it is a nice area. So I think, I'm not a developer, but I think possibly if the developer can make it work, either 1 or 2 will work there. But what I want to stress is the need to do something about that site. I know it's a conservation area. From the other 5 developments that were done previously, we've seen how they've been done sympathetically. That it hasn't really, to be honest, when I went to look at the site, it was difficult for me to find. I know the area, just it was quite hard for me to, because I couldn't pinpoint where the entrance was. but knowing the area, driving past the site, unless you're actually looking for it, you won't even notice the new 5 developments because they blend in to the area very well. What you notice is the church and the vandalism and the graves and the war memorial and stuff like that. So I am aware it's a conservation area, and I know the importance of preserving conservation areas. But I also have I think something needs to be done about that site. Otherwise, it's just going to get worse. It's making people's lives miserable to live around there. It's not particularly. It's on a bend. It's next to a school, and there's antisocial behavior. There's like drugs issues and alcohol issues going on there. We don't want that around children or the sports ground. So we need to do something about that site. That's how I feel about this. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you. I wholeheartedly agree. We need to do something. However, is the solution to properties there in a conservation area with the tree issue and also the shading issues that are there at the moment that we've heard today? Any further comments? No? Okay. Thank you, members. Does any officer have any points of clarification?
Yes. Through you, Chairman. Obviously, members have talked a lot about the issue of antisocial behaviour, and I think the officer report does sort of reflect on that a little bit. And I think ultimately, the issue that members have got to remember when making a decision is that the committee is here to deal with the issue of appropriate land use and not necessarily to deal with short-term issues or relatively short-term issues of antisocial behaviour, which could be addressed through other mechanisms, community policing, etc., etc. I mean, it's interesting that when talking about antisocial behaviour, we've heard lots about, well, what's happening at the church and the vandalism of the church. Well, the church isn't this application site. So I don't know whether is there going to be, and this is a rhetorical point, is there going to be an argument put forward that actually there needs to be houses built in the churchyard to address the antisocial behaviour taking place in the churchyard? In terms of the impact of this application, the site is within a conservation area. It's also within the setting, in particular, of the church, which is a Grade 1 listed building, so the highest standard of listed building that you can get, and therefore that has a more sensitive setting, and greater consideration should be given to the impact of that setting, as identified by the Council's Conservation Officer. The verdant character of this site, the openness of the glebe, all contributes to that character of the conservation area, all contributes to the setting of the church and the overall significance of those heritage assets, and consequently, sort of substantial harm is identified, or significant harm is identified to those heritage assets, and the recommendation is to refuse the application accordingly. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, David. Okay, so do I have a proposer to go with officer's recommendation to refuse planning permission? Councillor Clark. Do I have a seconder to go with the recommendation? Okay. We will now go to the vote. If you support the proposal to go with officer's recommendation, please raise your hand.
That's 2 votes, Chairman.
Okay. If you, sorry, we'll now go to the vote. If you're against the proposal to go with officer's recommendation, please raise your hand.
That's 3 votes, Chairman.
Okay. Can I ask for a different proposal? Councillor Sinnick-Love.
I propose that we go against officer recommendation and grant permission for the 2 houses.
And can we have planning permission, planning reasons, please?
Because, as I said previously, I don't feel that it's detrimental. Having listened to the applicant and the agent, I don't feel that it's going to have a necessarily detrimental impact on the character or the conservation area. The church is across the other side of the road. Thank you.
Are you happy to accept that?
Can I say, I think Councillor Senetclough needs to grapple with one of the reasons for refusal is the harm to the setting of the church. So I think the reasons for approving must kind of grapple with that, deal with that issue, as to whether you think that's causing harm or not. And the other designated heritage assets in the area.
I feel that the heritage questions were answered adequately through the agent and the applicant, and that there wouldn't be any harm to the Grade 1 listed church or the other heritage features in the conservation area.
Chairman, in terms of planning conditions, are they delegated to officers?
Yes, and the chair. We will now go to the vote. If you support a new proposal, please, if you support the new proposal, please raise your hand. If you're against the new proposal, please raise your hand.
2 votes, Chairman.
This is now approved. Sorry, thank you. I will now hand over to David Rowan to present application FYR 240342/F, agenda item number 9. David.
Thank you, Chairman. So, agenda item 9 is an application for the formation of 2 studio flats on the first and second floor, including change use of part of ground floor to create the access to the flats at 51 Marketplace in Wisbech. So the site is shown in red on the location plan and aerial photo. It sits to the eastern end of the Marketplace with Little Church Street to the rear. The building itself is unlisted but next to listed property and also within the conservation area. Current layout of the building is shown. The upper floors are currently vacant with planning permission granted in 2022 for the use of these as a single flat and retaining the retail unit at ground floor. So the current application proposes 2 flats, one on each of the upper floors, served by a staircase at the rear of the building. Each flat would be served by 1 window facing onto the Marketplace. So hopefully the plans are fairly self-explanatory. Left-hand image, retail at ground floor. Middle image, the first floor. You've got the staircase to the rear of that. And then again, the second floor with, again, the staircase at the rear, fronting onto the Marketplace. So this would result in flats of total areas of 22.2 and 26.7 square metres. The national space standards set out that such accommodation should be 37 square metres, which can be relaxed for affordable accommodation to 85% of this, which would be 31.5 square metres. The accommodation proposed is clearly significantly below this. To put those sorts of areas in context for members, the area actually taken up by this committee table is around 29 square metres. So essentially certainly the smaller of the 2 flats would basically fit in the middle of this room, and that includes the kitchen area, the bathroom area, the sleeping area and the living area. Photos of the front of the building are on the left-hand image, and then to the rear is shown on the right-hand image, and this is where the access to the flats would be taken from. So the principle of using the upper floors of town centre buildings for residential accommodation is accepted, and indeed this property has the benefit of a permission for 1 flat across those 2 upper floors. However, the standard of accommodation to be provided here is a significant concern. The council has policies to achieve high quality living environments, which flats that are 25 to 40% smaller than the minimum indicated within the national space standards would not be indicative of. The recommendation is therefore to refuse the application as set out within the officer report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, David. We have no speakers on this application, so I would now like to invite members to put questions to officers. Okay, I have one, and David and I spoke at the chairman's briefing regarding this. Recently, we passed here single living in containers. You were going to go and find out the area of the container. Is it on par with what we're looking at?
Through you, Chairman. So this was the application site, wasn't it, at Middle Close in Wisbech, which was an application submitted by a housing association and which was to be occupied by the ferry project, and was basically to be sort of transitional housing for people that were previously homeless. The internal size of those units was about 25 metres squared. Sorry, 25 square metres. However, those units did also have an area of external veranda, which could be used as amenity space, and they did also have access to communal garden facilities. So I think in terms of the overall comparison, in terms of the nature of the accommodation, and indeed the actual detail of the accommodation and its access to amenity space, there is a significant difference with what we're looking at here. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Any further questions? Right, thank you, David. We have no speakers on this. Thank you, everyone. I would now like to invite members to debate the item in respect of material planning considerations relevant to the application. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that I think the officers have got this right, that it is far too restricted in terms of the floor space. And so, as I said, I feel the officers have it absolutely right on this one.
Councillor Maffin.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to agree with that because I went to see this site as well. Like I said, I live in Wisbech. I go past it every day. Yes, it does need something doing with it. It's been lying like that for a long time. But we do need quality accommodation in Wisbech. If we approve this, it's going to be like it's going to be a problem spot because you're just going to have, it's not quality living for anyone. I don't think anyone's going to enjoy living there. So I think the officers have got this bang on, and I don't think I'll be supporting this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Further debate? No? Okay. Thank you, members. Does any officer have any points of clarification? Okay. Do I have a proposal to go with officer's recommendation to refuse planning permission? Councillor Mafton. Do I have a seconder for this recommendation? Councillor Senate-Clough. We will now go to the vote. If you support the proposal to go with officer's recommendation, please raise your hand.
That's a unanimous decision, Chairman.
Thank you. This application has been refused. I will now hand over to David Rowan to present application FYR 240532-0, agenda item number 10.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is an outline application to erect up to 2 dwellings with matters committed in respect of access, land south east of 190 White Road at Easttree. The application site is shown in red on the location plan and aerial photo. It forms part of an agricultural field located on White Road as this sort of leaves the village, heading out into the open countryside. The site immediately to the northwest of the application site is currently under construction. There is a permission on there for 2 dwellings. I think one is substantially complete, the other is yet to be started. And those dwellings are shown on this drawing. So the application is in outline with access committed. Single point of access is proposed to serve the 2 dwellings, with these then shown as being arranged on a similar alignment to those approved on the adjacent site, and a footpath link to the neighbouring site is also shown with the dark line to the front of the site, running from sort of the access point towards the neighbouring site. An indicative street scene has also been submitted with the application. So photos of the site are shown here. Photos 1 and 2 are looking south down White Road. The application site is behind the hedge on the right hand side of the photo. Photo 3 is looking north up White Road towards the built form of East Tree, and then 4 is just the adjacent development to the north of the site. So in summary, East Tree is defined as a small village within the settlement hierarchy in the local plan where infill development will normally be permitted. The development here does not constitute infill and would create further ribbon development into the open countryside to the detriment of the character and appearance of the area. The officer recommendation is therefore to refuse the application as set out within the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David. We have one speaker on this application, and I would like to invite Lee Bevans, the agent, to make his presentation to committee. Mr. Bevan, you have 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. In addressing the officer's reasons for refusal in the executive summary, item 1.2, my client has had 2 previous applications approved along White Road for 4 bungalows in total, going as far back as 2019. Whilst policy LP3 means that only infill development is accepted, this scheme looks to continue the ribbon development form on this side of White Road and will be the last 2 bungalows applied for by my client. Members have previously agreed that the previous bungalows approved followed the general pattern of development along White Road, which is ribbon or frontage development. I disagree with the officers that this proposal would fail to respect the core shape and form of the settlement by virtue of following this linear pattern along White Road. I also understand that some locals have raised the issue of the footpath, but the extent of the adoptable footpath is on the opposite side of the road outside of number 127 White Road. Should any development be approved on that side of the road, then the adoptable footpath would be extended further along White Road, providing additional pedestrian safety. Item 1.3, we do not believe that the site is contrary to policy LP12. The site is adjacent to the existing developed footprint of the village, being the 2 large detached bungalows to the northeast and the 2 bungalows currently under construction. We do not feel it will have a harmful impact on the character and appearance of the surrounding countryside, as the dwellings proposed will be single-storey in height and reflect nearby dwellings. The proposal is of a scale and in location that is in keeping with the established form of White Road and will extend the linear features, but in a manner which is proportionate to the small village of Easttree, and will provide 2 bungalows offering a wider choice of housing. Officers refer to policy LP16 in their recommendation, and the site does retain the hedgerow to the front of the site. This would be reinforced in a future reserve matters application and could be conditioned. The scheme will improve the character of the local area and does not adversely impact on the street scene. If I could just refer to the slide. Yep, thank you. I've uploaded this image from the forthcoming Whittlesea bypass consultation, which shows the northern and southern bypass options. Should the favoured southern bypass come forward, this area of Easttree will be well placed to access that infrastructure, and the associated benefits will no doubt come. I've marked the site in red. Hopefully you can see that on there. The proposed scheme will offer well-designed bungalows which will meet local demand. Environmental health have raised no objections and highways have raised no objections. The site falls within flood zone 1 and is probably the last section of that run before it enters into flood zone 2 and 3. The scheme next door has just sold the bungalow that's been completed is now sold, and there's strong interest in the second bungalow which is just coming out of the ground, which shows the strong demand for this type of product in this area. We would ask members to reconsider the recommendation for refusal and approve the proposal based upon the local support for the scheme and my points in this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like to invite members to put questions to Mr. Bevans. If you would like to ask a question, please raise your hand. Councillor Senate Clough.
First of all, I have a point of clarity to the officers because the image of this image here is very much out of date on the strategic outline business case for the relief road. Those 2 routes have not been agreed, and if a relief road were
do you want to put this to officers? This is questions to Mr. Bevan.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
Okay, I do have a question.
Thank you.
Okay. Can you confirm that the site is in flood zone 1? It is absolutely in flood zone 1.
Categorically states in flood zone 1, yes. The bottom of the site the next piece of land down starts to go into flood zone 2 and 3. So as it approaches towards the railway line and the Sustrans route that runs alongside the bottom of the land, that is in flood zone 2 and 3. So this would be the last development proposed by the client.
Any further questions? Thank you, Mr. Bevan. I would now like to invite members to put questions to officers.
Thank you. I just wanted to put across the point that image should not have any impact on our decision today, the image of the relief road, because it is 3 years out of date, and the actual route has not been confirmed by Mark MacDonald.
Through you, Chairman, clearly it's not an image that we've put on as officers, it's an image that's been provided by by the agent. In terms of the relevance of that to the decision that members are making today, I think it's fair to say that with the best will in the world, that is a very, very long-term project that will be a number of years before it comes to fruition, and which perhaps is certainly very immaterial really to the determination of an application for 2 dwellings in front of you this afternoon.
Thank you. That was absolutely my point, that it is immaterial to this application when we consider it.
Thank you. Any further questions? No? Okay. Chair, thank you for everyone. I would now like to invite members to debate the item in respect of material planning considerations relevant to the application. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. Shall I kick it off then? Okay. From memory, we gave ones previously and we said no further development. This, since then, has obviously come along. I personally feel it will mirror what is already there. I can't see it go, as the agent has already said, regarding its end to flood zones 2 and 3. It comes to it does give the road the end point. Also, whilst I'm doing the site survey, I saw on the lamppost or on a telegraph pole there was a yellow laminated piece, but apparently there is, correct me if I'm wrong, an application for 3 across the road from there. So we're hedging our way to the end of the village. As long as there are no further development along there, they are the last 2, I personally would be supporting this.
Okay, Chair, I just missed that. You said you would be supporting it.
I would happily support this as long as this is the last development along this side of the road to a natural boundary at the dike, but we then get into flood zones 2 and 3, which we don't want to go into. So this would be the last property.
Chair, I agree with you, and I feel that there is a need for bungalows in the area, and these, if they continue in the same style as the ones that are already in existence, they provide a nice outlook on entry to the village. My only concern really was the risk of flooding, and I know that the road quite well, and if, as you say, this would be the last development along there, then I too would support it.
Thank you. Further comments? No. Okay. Thank you. Does any officer have any points of clarification? No. Okay. Do I have a proposal to go with officer's recommendation to refuse the planning permission? No. Okay. So we move on. If you, sorry, do I have any? So we don't have a seconder. If you are against the proposal to go with officer's recommendation, please raise your hand. Sorry, we're against officer. Again, if you're a seconder, right? Okay, sorry. Start again. Do we have a? Right. Okay, right, sorry, yeah. Can I ask for a different proposal? Can I ask for a different proposal, please? To go against Officer's recommendation. That's your proposal? Yeah, that's what I'm asking, yeah.
I need to find grounds for, that's why I'm proposing, trying to look for grounds.
You're still looking.
Councillor Clough, you? Sorry, Councillor Murphy.
Build up to and including that one and the other side of the road, but that is a final stop.
Can I just make a comment on that? Thank you. Through you, Chair. The committee doesn't have power to bind future applications and planning committees. So insofar as you want to make this the last approval on this side of the road, you don't have power to do that. All you can do is express a view, which will be recorded in the minutes.
Sounds like, unfortunately, we don't have that. Do I have a seconder? To go against?
We need reasons.
Okay. Reasons?
Well, because it's in flood zone 1, and no reason why it should not be. I can't think of another reason, to be honest with you. It speaks for itself. It's why turn it down? Because there is no reason to turn it down. It is in flood zone 1, can be built, and well.
To be fair, I don't think. Yeah. So sorry.
Through you, Chairman. I accept Councillor Murphy's sort of points on that. However, I think in terms of there's no reason to refuse the application. Clearly, there is a recommended reason for refusal of the application, which perhaps needs to be addressed as part of the reason for granting the application.
Councillor Clough.
I feel through you, Chair, that Councillor Murphy was possibly saying that it wouldn't encroach, and that it's acceptable in terms of amenity impacts and highway safety.
Okay.
At my base, well, I think policy LP 12 seeks to support development that does not harm the character of the countryside, and I believe this does not harm the character of the countryside. So, on that basis, I support.
Yeah. LP 12 detrimental landscape character impact, contrary to policy LP 12 and the local plan. Okay. I don't believe there's any highway safety implications either. Okay. Are you happy with those, Stephen? Conditions to officers, chairman's.
As
Okay.
conditions to officers, is it?
Yeah. With chairman's input. Okay. Do I have a seconder for the proposal? Councillor Mufferdon. We will now go to the vote. If you support the new proposal, please raise your hand.
That's a unanimous decision, Chairman.
He turns the page quickly. This declaration is approved. Okay. Okay. Chairman, right, okay, the final item.
You've done that. You've done that. It's okay.
Well, I've done that.
Yes, you've done that.
Okay.
We did the minutes at the beginning.
Oh, okay. Right, okay. Okay, thank you for attending. This concludes today's business, and I declare the meeting closed. The next meeting is on October the 30th, 2024. Thank you.